time, and we are going to be reacting to the entire first round of the NBA playoffs, and we're going to be going over some of the historic stats, some of these teams' leanings in the offseason, what they might do, and then we're also going to be going over the new NBA draft lottery rules. What does this mean if your team is perpetually awful? Well, you're probably not going to like it. And then also, we'll preview the second round of the NBA Finals, but this is our weekly segment of Brick. Let's let you talk about baseball. What's going on in the world of baseball?
Red Sox are a fucking mess. Roman Anthony's hurt. Ranger Suarez. We signed Garrett Crochet's hurt. The Red Sox fired their coach. They've been ass ever since. They're 3-5 ever since. Could be the worst season that I've witnessed in baseball for the Red Sox in my entire tenure. So to say I'm an optimistic Red Sox fan right now would be the contrary. It is a rough time to be a Red Sox fan right now.
Yeah, it's a rough time, and I saw Alex Cora get fired as an outsider. I'm like, okay, well, he won. Did he win one or two World Series with the Red Sox?
He won
One.
one.
And then he was a part of the Astros team, and then he was also accused of cheating with the Astros. He was a part of those teams that won the World Series. Then he was also a part of the Red Sox. But for me, on the outside looking in, I'm just someone who sees the Red Sox each time I tune in. Their roster keeps deteriorating, and I keep knowing less and less of the players. So for me, I'm like, did they really just fire a guy because they didn't want to pay anybody? Like, how can this be on the manager if you're gonna trade Mookie Betts because you don't want to pay him? You trade Rafael Devers because you don't want to pay him. You can't get any number one ace pitching in. Like, what is he supposed to do? Zandy, you said, just walked in free agency. Like, this is all Cora's fault. He's the one who decides, you know what, don't pay anybody. I think this will be really good for the Red Sox.
Like when general managers are just like computer analytic nerds half the time. They have
Yeah.
like the literally the poster child of the analytics, no personality NPC type of GM, Craig Breslow, and he ran his calculations. He says Alex Cora isn't the right guy. Alex Cora, his history with the Red Sox, the first year he won the World Series, but the 2018 Red Sox are also tied to the cheating that the Astros did. They weren't accused of as many cheating scandals, but they also cheated and they won 108 games. The next year they won 84. So cheating definitely played a part. And then after that, like they made the playoffs 3 times post 2018 and they lost in the first round. So as far as Cora leaving, I thought he was going to get fired at the end of the season, especially how they've started so far. But to get fired 25 games in, that'd be like if somebody fired an NBA coach 10 games into the season. It's ridiculous. Or if somebody fired a coach, I don't know, 4 games into the season in the NFL. It's stupid. But we're fans of the sport. We got to stick through it. But yeah, the Red Sox, they've gotten cheap. They've gotten stupid. They make bad trades. They can't build a roster to save their life. They can't develop. It's a tough time to be a Red Sox fan.
And so, like, also the cheating, too. Like, so because I pay attention to your hand signals, that's cheating. Like, really? What's the difference between that and studying film in the NFL? Like, if you can figure out the other team's hand signals for a pitch, I think that should be totally fair game. Like, I don't think that should be out of the realm for baseball. Like, you know what pitch is
Yeah.
coming? Like, okay, maybe it's harder to communicate, or maybe like the pitcher and the catcher just have to develop a little bit more rapport. But for me, like, I watch the NFL and you can like watch film. There's certain cues that the quarterback will have when he's audibling that will give you an idea if it's going to be a run play or a pass play. Then you have the middle linebacker audible. Same thing with Tom Brady reading the defense. So what's the difference between reading the pitcher? So like the so-called cheating, it's like not steroids or performance enhancing drugs. I get like baseball's a little bit different, but it would also make the offense more interesting. Because if every team can do it, why not?
Yeah, I see the argument there. Like, I think the only thing is with baseball, if you know a fastball's coming, you're most likely going to be able to hit that fastball because these guys are superhuman. Like, the fact that they can even hit a pitch that's 90 miles an hour is one thing. But when you know when the pitch is coming, that's when you see their stats jack up tremendously. But yeah, I kind of agree to some extent because they had that information available to every team, and it was just the Astros and Red Sox that took advantage of it. So it is what it is. But yeah, I mean, I think in baseball, they should have at least one baseball league where you just cheat. Everybody does steroids. Everybody can cheat. It's just just let all the hatches loose and just let everybody cheat and just see what happens. I think it would actually make a pretty good product.
Yeah, and guess which league people would watch?
Yeah, the fun league. It'd be the fun league
Yeah,
instead of a sport that took baseball 100 years to make a playoffs. I look back at the history of
a
baseball. You know how the
hundred years to
Yankees.
make a playoffs.
So baseball was created in 1870, right? And they
Okay.
didn't start up until from 1870 to 1977, I believe. They the way that the playoffs worked was the best team in the NL and the best team in the AL met, and what the only playoffs were the World Series. That's why the Yankees
Okay.
won 27 World Series. It's like, okay, you had the best team, the
Oh,
best players, and everybody was going to New York because they were the best team and they were always winning. So it's like obviously this team won a bunch of World Series when they had Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig and all these other guys there. It's no wonder they won a bunch of World Series. And then the playoffs were introduced where it was just like ALCS and then the World Series. And now whoever wins the World Series now, like you earned it. You won the World Series. But it took them
wait.
100 years to make a playoff.
So everyone giving the Celtics grief for the Bill Russell era, winning 11 out of 13 championships, having a player being your coach and winning a championship. Those same people are Yankees fans because most Lakers fans are Yankees fans, and they got all their championships when you only had to win one round, where Bill Russell also had to win more than one round to do it. And I feel like basketball is the only sport where you get discredited based off the era that you won into. So all the Lakers fans that are also Yankees fans when the Dodgers aren't good are the people giving the Celtics grief when their team only had to win one round, not
And it was
necessarily
like
against the
that.
second best team necessarily.
And the Yankees, keep in mind, from 1920 to like basically the end of the 70s, were by far and away the best team. Like all the young players, like Mickey Mantle, for example, signed with the Yankees when he was 15 years old because he wanted to play for the Yankees, who won at that time like 15 World Series before him.
What? How
So
does
all the
that work?
player and the
How
way
do
it
you
worked
sign
in
when you're
baseball
15?
then, I don't know, 1950s were weird, but like they essentially like all the good players that were coming up, the Yankees would just sign them because they A had the most money and B were the best team and everyone wanted to play for the best team. So that's why the Yankees won so many World Series from the 20s all the way to essentially the 70s. That's why they have 90% of their World Series rings.
Yeah, because baseball didn't have a cap until recently, right?
They still don't have a cap.
Oh,
People can sign as much money. The Mets payroll right now is $500 million, and they have the worst record in baseball.
okay. So we can't study film, we can't steal signals, but we can cheat by just
But we
spending the
could,
most money possible. So it'll keep the bad teams really bad. There's no even playing field. So you get essentially the worst out of both worlds.
yeah, and it took baseball 150 years to have a challenge strike. Like this is the first year that they can challenge balls and strikes. It took them that long, and it took them forever to get a pitch clock. Meanwhile, the NBA introduced the pitch clock in what, the 80s.
Yeah.
NFL had the play clock in like what, the 40s. Like baseball is very slow to adapt. And that's why baseball hasn't always been king. Now it's been better because their rules have been implemented and people like it a lot better. And now baseball is great to watch. But
What do you
10,
think the
15 years ago,
strength of baseball is? You have the best live viewing experience. It's summer, and you're going on like in cities that don't necessarily have like the best weather. So when you're out in the summer, you want to be outside all the time. So if you can go out in like Seattle on a weeknight, Chicago, Michigan, get out to a baseball game. So like you have the best live experience, whereas like the NFL is really expensive and it's honestly a better experience watching it at home on TV than going to
for
an
sure.
NFL game. And then the NBA, you never know if a ref is going to go on a power trip and eject a star player from a game. So that could
Or if the
happen
star
as well.
player is
Or a
going to
star
play.
player could just sit out. Yeah, you get Embiid, Kawhi, someone like that. They could just sit out. And then hockey's just like, it's
Hockey's
fun,
a,
but it can be a grind.
oh my God, that reminds me. I watched the Bruins game seven. I watched a
Yeah.
couple of hockey games this series, and I was always wondering because for like my entire life, it's been like baseball, football, basketball in any particular order as my three favorites. In hockey, even though I really liked it as a kid, I kind of fell out of it about a decade ago. That's why we don't cover hockey on the sport on this podcast because they're probably the same. And I finally know why now. So between quarters, unless if it's halftime, the NFL, the MLB, and the NBA, their intermission's like 2 minutes long. In hockey, every single period, it's a 20-minute wait. And it's for them to re-ice and everything and do all that shit. But the reason why nobody watches hockey is because their intermission is insanely long. And you want to know what their halftime looks like when they're going through each period? It's 5 minutes of them talking and then 15 minutes of commercials. So no wonder why nobody watches hockey. The period ends and they're gone for 30 minutes and they're off somewhere else. So it's no wonder that's why I don't watch hockey.
Well, I think hockey is also similar to golf, where it is definitely a more of a privileged nepotism sport, especially factor in like the times that you're practicing. You have to have parents willing to drive you there at 3 in the morning. It's like really depends on when you can get ice time, and it can be pretty expensive to get into a good league there. Like the NBA, and the NFL has its share of nepotism, sure, but I feel like there's a lot more guys where it's kind of like the story of like being a musician, being an athlete. It's cool because it can lift like generations out of poverty, where hockey and golf kind of turn people off and they're not as interesting because it feels more like a nepotism sport.
And hockey's the most expensive sport for as far as equipment, as far as entering leagues. So most of the time, it's going to be rich people that are playing hockey. More often than not, basketball. You can get a basketball at your Walmart for $20 and shoot at a rim with no net, and you're fine. Baseball. A lot of people from like the Dominican Republic will just use like bottle caps from soda cans essentially as like balls essentially. And then football. That's a little bit more nepotism, but not quite nearly as much.
Yeah, if you're like a quarterback for sure, but I feel like other positions, if you're athletic, it's like a little bit of a lower barrier to entry. And if you're really good, your school can pull some strings if your parents don't have the money for you to play. So I feel like that's another reason where like hockey, it's like also not as on the top of the list for me. And it's just hard to keep up with it because the playoffs are the same time as basketball. I played basketball, so it's like the sport I understand the most when I'm watching it and relate the most to it. So it's like the same time, and it's another 82 game season going on as well. So
And you never know, like in hockey, like what just happened in the NBA in the postseason, Celtics blowing a 3-1 lead. That's like historic for the NBA. When somebody has a 3-1 lead, they overcome. Unless if Doc Rivers is your coach. But in the NHL, they blow a 3-1 lead every round. Like there was a blown 3-1 lead this past round, and if you look at every round of hockey the last decade, somebody blows a 3-1 lead. Happens
a
every time.
3-0 lead is blown is not unheard of in hockey either. That's like,
Yeah.
okay, your goalie is struggling. We got him a higher dose of Adderall for his prescription. Now he's locked in. Then we're good.
Yes.
Like your goalie
Yeah,
could
that's the other
literally
thing.
just snap out of a slump and like, oh shit, I remember how to play hockey again, and then he's good. You come back from a 3-0 deficit.
And I was curious because I looked at Tim Thomas because I watched the Bruins from like '07 to like 2014. That was like peak hockey for me. And they had Tim Thomas. And how did they win the Stanley Cup? He had the greatest playoff run in the history of hockey, and that's why the Bruins won. I even asked Gemini, I'm like, okay, would they have won if Tim Thomas wasn't cracked that year? And the answer, and they said no. They said no. That they weren't. They were pretty much average in scoring. They had a good defense, but for the most part, it was because Tim Thomas went just ballistic in the playoffs, and that's how most of the hockey teams end up winning.
Yeah. And it is interesting because we are coming out of the first round of the NBA playoffs here. It is officially over. It ended Sunday, and we had two game sevens, and there was one specific stat coming out of the first round. And it's like, if you take anything out of the first round, I think you should take this. In a series where we had the Knicks and Hawks go to 6 games, we had two game sevens in the Eastern Conference on Sunday, and then yeah, I think we had three
And
game
Cavs too.
sevens. Yeah, the Cavs went to a game seven as well, so it was a game six series and then three 7 game series. And you take a look at that, there's only been one team in the last 12 years that has won an NBA championship when it went past 5 games. That was the 2013-2014 San Antonio Spurs with Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, and Tony Parker. There has not been a team that has gone past 4 or 5 games since 2014 that has won an NBA championship. So you look at all of these teams in the Eastern Conference, and they have to look over at Oklahoma City, and you have to look over now at the San Antonio Spurs. Those were the only two contenders that really took care of business in the first round. The Detroit Pistons, the San Antonio Spurs, and the Oklahoma City Thunder were also the only 3 teams to hit the 40-20 rule. And now you take a look at it. Well, the Pistons go to a 7-game series where the other team's best player gets hurt, and Franz Wagner. Maybe you don't think he's better than Paulo, but he was the one taking over for the Magic in the fourth quarter, and they have a tough series. So now you're looking at the West, you're like, wow, it really only might be the Spurs and the Thunder that are the only actual contenders, because I do think this is a real stat, because you can't be messing around in the first round, giving up easy games. Like the teams that win the NBA Finals, like typically just take care of business and don't play around with their food.
Yeah, and for the Pistons, they went down 3-1 to the Magic, who, honestly, I thought the Magic were the better team in this series, and I think had Wagner not gotten hurt, they'd probably win that game. And then the Celtics, they were up 3-1 against the Sixers. They could have easily closed it out, and then they blow that series to the Sixers. So that's a whole other thing. Cavs and Raptors, I think the Cavs kind of played with their food a little bit, but the fact that we had 2 3-1 series that ended up being overcame, the Pistons overcame it, and the Celtics blew it, speaks to these as far as just the fact I don't think any of these teams end up winning the finals. Maybe the Knicks are probably the favorites at this point, but in the West, I mean, the Thunder, far and away the best team. The Spurs, they're having a good time against the Timberwolves, but I don't think anybody in the East is going to go very far when they match up with any of those teams in the West.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting though. Only one team in the past 12 years winning the NBA championship, and that was the team that beat the Miami Heat as well, and then they ended up winning the NBA Finals in 5. So definitely interesting. But Greg Popovich and the Spurs, they typically would load manage, so maybe that ended up helping them when they get to the playoffs too. So that was definitely an interesting stat. And then gonna go over some historic stats. Then we'll cover some of the rounds. Then we'll get to the NBA draft lottery here. So there has been some trends in the NBA playoffs this year. So for 3-1 comebacks, the Detroit Pistons and the Philadelphia Sixers made NBA history in 2026 by being the first postseason to feature 2 3-1 comebacks in the same round. So that was
Wow.
the first time that's ever happened.
That's insane.
And then this is the first round this year that featured 3 Game 7s in the first round. This is the most in over a decade since the 2014 playoffs. Again, the same playoffs that the San Antonio Spurs ended up winning the NBA Finals. And what were they? The last team to win an NBA championship. A team went past 5 games in the first round, so maybe there is something to that this year.
Yeah, that could be optimism for the Timberwolves. They're fighting against the Spurs. The Knicks went 6. They could be a team that's in contention. Maybe the Sixers, if they can keep doing what they did against the Celtics to the Sixers. So that's a good sign of optimism.
And then we have also seen the third largest drop in points this year, where the scoring average in the NBA playoffs from the regular season dropped by 8 points.
Oh, God. And that's per team?
Yeah, so on average, the scoring went down by 8 points per game.
Do you think that's like shooting deficiencies, or do you think that's the coach swallowing the whistle? What do you think plays into that? Or do you think maybe defense is amplified in the playoffs? Where do you see that essentially 10-point difference coming from?
Yeah, I would see that 10-point difference. I think teams are leaning a bit away from the 3-point game, where the pace and space era with Steph Curry was definitely new to the NBA. So Steve Kerr was really the first person to introduce that 5 wide lineup, and they were really the team that perfected it. And it's kind of similar to what we're seeing in the NFL right now, where all the quarterbacks basically essentially had to run to be a legitimate quarterback, and you rarely see pocket passers now. Well, the speed on defense has now caught up to most of those quarterbacks, and I think now in the NBA, if you're a big man, you're expected to learn how to shoot, where before it was go stand under the rim. You're just going to learn your fundamentals, setting screens, post performance, where now instead of learning a post game, it's not as useful to a big man who can shoot threes, just play defense, and then get out on the perimeter. So I do think we're seeing players like Wembanyama come in who can actually get out on the perimeter and defend. Someone like Karl Anthony Towns is a bigger player who can defend on the perimeter. And then, the Philadelphia 76ers as well can now match up defensively with the team like the Celtics because they have the speed to contain it. And then I think some teams just rely on the three-point shot too much, like the Celtics, where if you're off, then you might lose if you get outshot by 3. Where I think defensively now teams are just catching up size-wise, and then centers now hitting 3. So now instead of having a small lineup, we're having bigger defensive lineups. And I think the coaches are starting to figure out the three-point lineup. So I think it has definitely been more of a defensive playoff.
Yeah, I would agree. I feel it's like, to me, with the way that the defenses have adapted, I'm curious if over the next year or two, we're going to have the next NBA renaissance, because we had the three-point shot that Steph Curry has kind of perfected, the Warriors and what they were able to build. And now that teams are adapting to it, I'm curious what the next trend's going to be, because typically it comes every 10 to 15 years. The three-point revolution really started around 2012. So I think we're due in the next 2 or 3 years to see what's the next evolution. I still think three-point shots are going to be very valuable in the NBA, but are we going to start to move away from it? People starting to take the easy buckets again? I'm curious to see how that progresses.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then we're seeing like teams like the Celtics just start to dribble out the shot clock more, where during the regular season, they would try and take up most of the shot clock. So you're seeing less just that Mike D'Antoni style of three-point shooting, where it was basically the 7-second offense where you're trying to take a shot as soon as you can, where I feel like probably the average may have been brought down single-handedly by the Magic and Detroit Pistons series, because the Orlando Magic also were the first team in NBA history to only hit 1 field goal in a fourth quarter, and then they also in game 6 only had 19 points in the second half.
Yeah, that's just awful. That's awful. There's no other way to dice that. That's pathetic in every way.
And then they had another stat against them too, where the Detroit Pistons were the first team on the road in an elimination game to have a 24-point comeback.
So the Magic literally had the win in their hands, and they lost it, essentially. Was that pre or post Franz Wagner, too, having that huge run that they had?
That was game 6. So both of those stats came game 6, and then Franz Wagner was out in game 5 and 6, and game 7 he didn't play either. So after game 4, where the Magic won both games in Orlando and went back to Detroit, they had a shot at winning in game 5, and then they were up by 24 in game 6, and then they just gave up the lead, and then they set a historic fraction for losing a lead, where the Pistons came back from 24 down, held them to 1 for 20 from the field in the fourth quarter, and held them to 19 points in the second half. So it's the largest playoff comeback by a team facing elimination on the road, not just in the first round, ever.
Yeah.
And that's why Jamal Mosley got fired today.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. 8 points in the fourth quarter. We had Paulo Banchero shoot 4 of 20. Jalen Suggs shot 1 of 10. I mean, that's disgusting. That's awful. How do you score 8 points in a fourth quarter? That's got to be a record for playoffs futility, surely, right? How do you score 8 points in a quarter in the NBA playoffs?
Yeah. In a game where you just needed to hang on and play normal, too, for the Orlando Magic. And I get Franz Wagner got hurt, but you were up 24 points and you could only muster up 19 points. And this was at home. It wasn't like it was in Detroit. This was at home in Orlando. And, Cade Cunningham has the most points in the playoffs so far. And I get that. And Franz Wagner was the main person defending him. But still, that's
8.
unacceptable. And even if the refs are against you too, like I watched game 5 and the first 4 straight plays the Detroit Pistons had, they drove the ball and got the whistle every single time. One of the plays, the Orlando Magic player didn't even touch the Pistons player, and they just got the whistle the first 4 times. So you just take a look at that and you're like, oh, this isn't fishy at all. But at the same time, if you only score 19 points in the second half, you have to put yourself in a position where the refs can't beat you.
Yeah, I just can't get over 8 points in a quarter. I mean, the 11 points in a quarter is something to sniff at, but the fact that you're basically scoring a point essentially every 2 minutes at that point, like what the hell are they doing? And 1 of 20 from the field?
And then game 2
disgusting.
in the third quarter, it was a close game, and the Pistons come out in the second half and go on a 30-3 run against Orlando. 30-3.
Yeah, it's insanity, to be honest. But yeah, honestly, Magic got what they deserved. They were up. They looked like they were the best team. They looked like they were going to beat the Pistons soundly. And then they just choked it away. Game 6 was a joke. This game 7, was a joke. And then it just fell between their hands. So hopefully they find the right coach. But I do think this Magic team has a lot of potential. I'd like to see what their offseason moves entail, whether it's going after another guard, maybe it's getting another big man to pair alongside Paulo. But this Magic team has got a lot of potential. I'm excited to see what these next few years look like with them as they start to build with Wagner and Paulo Banchero.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, they have potential there, and potentially getting a new head coach will help the Orlando Magic. And this is a team that has lost 3 straight times in the first round now of the NBA playoffs, and the first time was against the Cleveland Cavaliers, and that was the series that I compared this Cleveland Cavaliers Toronto Raptors series to, where every single time the home team won, and then the Cavaliers just happened to be at home the last game. You lose that one, then you lose to Boston. Okay, that's fine. Last year, no one's expecting you to beat the Celtics. And then this year, though, this one has to sting the most because it hurts that Franz Wagner ends up going out, but at the same time, you had plenty of opportunities to win the series, and then you just couldn't get it done. Like, if you score more than 19 points, it's not like the Pistons were scoring that many points. It would just be the Magic would only get 80 points, and then they would only get 9.25, only hit 1 field goal. Game 5, you're kind of fighting the refs and the Pistons, but there was no excuse for them to lose Game 6, and then Game 7 was another game that was close in the first half, and then they absolutely got obliterated by the Pistons in the second half. So I do think a coaching change is definitely in order, and then potentially maybe you look at trading Wagner for another big, because you have him and Paulo together, but Paulo, you kind of want him to be the main ball handler, so maybe you see if you can trade Wagner maybe for someone like Giannis. Maybe trying to explore trading Wendell Carter for Giannis on this team, get another big man to go along with him. So definitely think there are some options for Orlando, because Desmond Bane had his moments in this series. Black played well for you. Jarrett Kane had some really big plays. So I do think this team has potential, but it's just so disappointing when you had an opportunity to make history and upset a number 1 seed, and then credit to Cade Cunningham. He's leading the NBA in scoring right now, and there are just times where he looks unstoppable, because he is someone who's also just had his lung reinflated, and he's still finding his legs. He's still playing himself back into shape. So the main problem with the Pistons is going to be, you probably would have lost this series if Wagner didn't get hurt. What are you going to do when a team has a 1-2 punch that goes up against you? Because just Paulo isn't going to be enough. And if Jaylen doesn't show up again, that's also going to be tough. I get Wendell Carter was a really good defender on Jalen Duren, but he came out in some games and then he would have the first 7 points, and then you look up at the end of the game and he only finishes with 12. So like Jalen
Yeah.
Duren's also another player. It's like trying to figure out where he fits in. Why did he have such a large drop off from the regular season where he's averaging close to 20 and now he's averaging 8 less points in the playoffs? So that's really going to be what Detroit needs to figure out if they want to move forward and, win at least in the conference championship. I think they have a good shot against Cleveland because Cleveland pretty much lost every single road game against Toronto, and they've done that throughout most of their history in the Donovan Mitchell era. So I think you can beat Cleveland, but like you're gonna also have to figure it out with Jalen Duren. So I definitely think you got away with one with Wagner getting hurt, because I do think if he plays, he was really the one who took over in game 1, game 3, and game 4 in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and that's the difference. I also think for the Magic, they got to figure out what they're doing with Jalen Suggs, because Jalen Suggs was awful this quarter. He shot 20. What was the stat line? He shot 27% from the field, was abysmal from three, shot 25% from three. Points drop off wasn't too dramatic, but just the fact he was one of the coldest shooters for them. Couldn't get a bucket if he tried in the postseason for them. So what do they do with him? Do they package him for a superstar? I know potentially Kawhi is on the move. Does he want to go to Orlando? You mentioned Giannis. Giannis could be somebody that you package Jalen Suggs with. You package maybe Wendell Carter, some picks. Maybe you can get him there. Ideally, if I'm the Magic, I want to keep Wagner and I want to keep Paulo. Bring in another star that can be another scorer for him, ideally. And then I think maybe they're in business.
Yeah, if I'm the Magic, and Jalen Suggs, he's one of those fan favorite players who, when he's on, he's on. He's like a 3 and D defender, but he has some Marcus Smart in him. Like he doesn't
100%.
know when to stop shooting, but he's a fan favorite. He plays hard, and there's nothing wrong with that. You want a guy like that on your team when he isn't having to take the second most or third most shots on a given night. You want him to take maybe the fifth or sixth most shots, get some offensive rebounds for you, and then he'll have maybe a game or two where he goes off. But you definitely don't want Jalen Suggs taking the second or third most shots on your team. But honestly, like if the Warriors are kind of breaking up the band this year, I know Steve Kerr is being lobbied by ESPN to go back to broadcasting. Honestly, I think Draymond Green would be a good fit on this Orlando Magic team. They kind of just need
Yeah.
veteran leadership. I think him and Wendell Carter would be a good fit together. So if you could get someone like Draymond and then another scorer, I would definitely package Jalen Suggs. That'd probably be a 3-team deal for him
Yeah. I think
with
that
some
I
pick
would love to
swaps.
see I'd love to see Draymond there. But with Jalen Suggs, I mean, he was pretty good the first 3 games, but he finishes game 5, he shoots 1 of 13, 4 of 9 in game 6, 1 of 10 in game 6, and then 2 of 9 in game 7. I don't like talk about a guy that's completely hot and cold. Game 4, he shoots 5 of 12, has 15 points, hits a bunch of threes for them. And then literally the last 4 games, he just breaks his game down. Shoots 1 of 10, 1 of 13, 2 of 9, can't make a shot. But yet he's also second in shots across the Magic. He's the one that's taking shots outside of Paulo. So I just think, yeah, I think the Marcus Smart comparison is very fitting there.
Yeah, so that is the Magic and Pistons and some historic stats there. Let's get into some positive historic stats. Plot twist, it's all the Knicks. The Knicks are the first team to lead by 47 points at halftime.
Yes. That game was insane. Beat them by what, 58, something like that?
Yeah, they beat them by over 50 points in that game, absolutely destroying the Hawks. CJ McCollum had a nice 2-game run, and I'm like, you know what? I still think the Knicks are going to win that game in 6, this series in 6, and that's exactly what happened. And then there's some other historic things that happened. Karl Anthony Towns tied an NBA record instead of postseason record by recording a triple-double while only making 1 field goal in Game 6.
Oh my God.
So he had a Jason Kidd triple-double there. And then the New York Knicks are the only team that has won the NBA Cup to advance to the conference semifinals.
Really? That's an interesting stat. Because we're
The
talking
only one to
NBA
do it.
Cup. That's insane. I forgot that they won the NBA Cup. That's crazy. So maybe there's hope for future NBA Cup champions. They look at the Knicks and say, let's be more like them.
Yeah, let's be more like them. And, the NBA Cup seems like if we're not going to win the NBA finals, we know we're not going to make a deep playoff run. Let's push all our chips together, push them to the front of the table, and then go for it. We had like the Lakers win the NBA Cup 1 year. I forget like the other winners, but the Knicks finally broke through and show you could win an NBA playoff round and an NBA Cup there. So that is huge. And then the Timberwolves became the first ever 6 seed to advance to the conference finals, semifinals in consecutive seasons as well.
Very nice. Yeah, beating the Nuggets. I thought the Nuggets were going to be able to crawl back, but credits to the Timberwolves. We had Jaden McDaniels, who played out of his mind when it was down with injury. We had Terrence Shannon, who stepped up for them. Julius Randle, I've given him a lot of shit, but he played well in this series. Rudy Gobert made some big defensive stops for him. So credits to the Timberwolves. I didn't know that they were 6 seeds back-to-back years, but good for them beating the Nuggets. I honestly thought the Nuggets were going to win that series.
Yeah, most people thought the Nuggets were going to win that series. A lot of people picked them, and then the Timberwolves, this is a historic, unprecedented thing that they did where you're the first team to be a 6 seed in consecutive seasons, back-to-back years to make it to the second round. And then also, like, Rudy Gobert played the best series of his life versus Jokic, and it seemed like the Nuggets actually got rattled. And as soon as Aaron Gordon went out, it was night and day, and that was really what did it for the Nuggets in this series. Is they're simply incapable of winning without Aaron Gordon. If he's not on the floor, your defense falls apart, and then he's also a key player on your offense, but he would be the one that would guard the other team's best player. He can guard wings sometimes, but he'd be the one who's on Naz Reid or Julius Randle. And then he would also offer some rim protection when Jokic is in foul trouble. And then without him on the floor, there's just a athletic gap that was way too big to ignore. But this is also a Nuggets team that still lost to the Minnesota Timberwolves without Anthony Edwards playing the last few games, and you still lost in 6 in this series. Like, we all knew it would go at least 6 games, but Charles Barkley, a couple other people were like, even if the Nuggets are down 3-1, if Anthony Edwards isn't there, they should still be able to go out there and then win 3 straight games versus the Minnesota Timberwolves. But credit to Chris Finch, because I feel like, say what you will about the Nuggets choking, everyone will talk about Jokic, everyone will talk about Jamal Murray, but what the media never focuses on, what was the other team that beat them doing? And Chris Finch said, you know what? The Nuggets didn't have to play us in the first round. And last time we played them in the playoffs, we gave them hell. We beat them. We came back down 20 points in the fourth quarter. We won the first 2 games in Denver. It didn't have to go down like this. They could choose whoever they wanted to play in the first round, whether it's the Lakers or Rockets in the 4 or the 5 seed game. They could have gone to Houston without Kevin Durant. They could have gone up against Alperen Şengün, Ime Udoka, Amen Thompson, Tari Eason. You could have gone up against the Houston Rockets, but you said no, we would rather go up against Anthony Edwards and the Minnesota Timberwolves. And then we beat you on a game where DeSumo, of all people, came out there and dropped 40 on you. And then Jaden McDaniels was going off in this game. And then Rudy Gobert had the best series of his life. It's the only time I've ever seen him look good in the NBA playoffs outside of that run that they had previously a couple of years ago against Denver. So, like, say what you will about the Nuggets choking, say what you will about Jamal Murray not showing up, about Jokic struggling, but you have to give Chris Finch a lot of credit because it seems like he is a very good head coach. He's gotten this team to back-to-back conference championships, and this is also with a talent disparity where your only real true star is Anthony Edwards, then you have a bunch of guys that fit together and play hard, which, in the NBA, it honestly is a skill to get these guys to play hard when they're making so much money.
Yeah, 100%. I also think, like, if we're going to shout out Chris Finch, let's talk about some of the guys that balled out for them. You mentioned Ayu Dosunmu. This guy is a second-round pick who the Bulls rejected, and he turned out to be a stud for the Timberwolves. Terrence Shannon, he had a huge game for them. He's another guy that was a late first-round pick. He's blossomed there. And then, obviously, we know Anthony Edwards, the Rudy Goberts of the world. But Jaden McDaniels, this is another guy. He was a late first-round pick. The Lakers rejected him, and he ended up playing really well for them in this series. Kind of what carried them without Anthony Edwards to advance past the Nuggets. So, like, it's all about Chris Finch and what he was able to do. But it's these guys that stepped in that we never even heard of prior to this series. The way that they stepped up, 43 points for Ayu Dosunmu in Game 4 to give them the 3-1 lead. Just a random guy off of the bench. Like, credits to them. I feel like the depth of the Timberwolves I overlooked a little bit when looking at the series. I wasn't expecting these guys to go ballistic.
Yeah, and they just play together, and they have a defensive game plan. Like, we're even watching the Spurs game against the Timberwolves now, and he had a lineup where he played Naz Reid, Julius Randle, and Rudy Gobert all together to go up against Victor Wembanyama. So it's like defensively, he's creative, and if you can have a team like that, you can overcome a lot. It's tough to overcome like the amount of talent that the Oklahoma City Thunder have right now, or it's tough to overcome Luka Doncic when he was playing as well as he was in the 2024 playoffs. But he has these guys playing at an elite level. They're a physical team. They're not scared of anybody, and they kind of have a similar feel to the Detroit Pistons and those Pistons teams that had a lot of gritty players. The thing is, when you have a scorer as prolific as Anthony Edwards, who realistically could go for 50 or 60 points if he really needed to. Like, I don't necessarily think this team can make the NBA Finals, but, if the Thunder have an off series and Jaylen Williams isn't fully healthy in the conference championship, like, the Timberwolves are definitely a sleeper team I could see getting to the NBA Finals, because I could see, like, a Timberwolves Pistons matchup or a Timberwolves Knicks. Like, I could definitely see that being a realistic matchup, and they've been to the conference championship 3 straight years, so I do think at some point you have to break through, right?
Naturally, 100%. And I think if they can rest Anthony Edwards the next game or so, especially if they end up getting a win in Game 1, which right now it's tied essentially midway through the third quarter, if they can win this game with Anthony Edwards playing limited minutes, maybe next game they do the same. If he's back to full strength by the time the conference finals kicks in, if they get past the Spurs, then I do think that they are a matchup nightmare for the Thunder. Maybe they don't have the same amount of shooting potentially, but they have big men like Rudy Gobert, who's a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, Julius Randle, who can step up for them. I think Julius Randle can bully the Chet Holmgrens of the world. And then Anthony Edwards is a pretty decent defender himself. I think he can match up with SGA pretty well. So this is a team, they're exciting to see. I do think the Spurs can potentially still win this series, but the Timberwolves are a scary team. They've kind of emerged as the third best team in these playoffs at this point.
Yeah, so I am definitely excited to see what the Timberwolves can do, especially against the Spurs, and then if they get past the Spurs against a team like the Thunder. So we'll definitely keep tabs there. I want to talk about the Nuggets for a few minutes, though, because there was an interesting quote from their front office, and they said the reason why they felt like they had to move on from Mike Malone was because they were afraid they were going to lose David Adelman to another team.
The GM?
Yeah, the Nuggets front office essentially was like, yeah, well, we had to fire Mike Malone because if we had Mike Malone as our coach the next year, then another team may have decided to poach David Adelman. Well, it's like, hey, wait a minute. How about before we decide to fire our head coach who won an NBA championship, who Jokic looked upset, unless he's a really good actor. He seemed pretty upset that Mike Malone was fired, and then it's all for David Adelman. And I saw a picture of David Adelman, and it was a side by side of him and the Liver King's boyfriend from the Netflix series, the guy who was on like meth, and it is like an exact match, and I'm like, this is who they fired Mike Malone to keep. Let me see if I can find this on X right now. I think I can, but like the Nuggets, like he definitely isn't a championship head coach, and Mike Malone is a guy who can get into his players, and maybe that's why it can wear on you a little bit, but I definitely don't think you're going to see them get bullied as much as they have against the Minnesota Timberwolves if you had Mike Malone there, because when Mike Malone was there, they still pushed them 7 games, and it wasn't Aaron Gordon or Dye. And the Nuggets actually went out there and got a little bit of a bench this year. They not like the best guys in the world, but like for what you had last year, you had 4.5 players where you had Aaron Gordon playing on a hamstring injury, and you already knew that was going to be an issue, so you didn't prepare for that. But you brought in Bruce Brown, you got him back, you got Tim Hardaway Jr. back, and the problem was Jokic just couldn't beat Rudy Gobert one-on-one in this series. And it seemed like the first time, like Jokic just didn't look superhuman in this series. And this was the first time I really saw this Nuggets team get really rattled, and Jamal Murray isn't the same Jamal Murray he was when they won the NBA Finals. He seems like he's gotten a little bit worse each year. He's had a couple knee surgeries. Nothing wrong with that, but this is a team who has won an NBA championship, but yeah, I don't know. I just don't think David Adelman is the guy, and I don't think he's worth firing Mike Malone over.
I think it's dumb for you to fire a head coach because you want the assistant coach to stick around. That just doesn't make any sense to me. We're like the Celtics, right? They have Joe Mazzulla. He's been a great coach for them. We'll talk about them and their recent loss to the Sixers. But like firing a head coach because you want the assistant to stay, make that make sense. Because that does like I see this happen all the time in the NFL. I see this happen in baseball. I see this happen in the NBA. Why would you fire a head coach because of their assistant? That just doesn't make sense. And this guy looks like the fucking Keebler elf. Like you're Jesus Christ. Oh, I see the Mad TV one next to it too. Yeah.
Like Denver Nuggets, David Adelman looks like the Tiger Kings. But I can't unsee this. How is this your coach? This is your coach.
Also, like Aaron Gordon's a great player, right? Obviously, he's been great for the Nuggets. How is your team so much different with and without Aaron Gordon? Aaron Gordon obviously makes you better, but the fact that you go from a top 10 defense with him to a bottom 10 defense without him, Aaron Gordon's a great player, and I'm going to say that a second time. But how does your team change the full fundamental part of your team when he's gone? That doesn't make any sense to me. That to me, that's when we can point to coaching. How does your team change so dramatically when one player like Aaron Gordon is gone? You can't go from a top 10 defense to a bottom 10 defense with just one player being removed from that.
Yeah, and this is, what you're going to get with a player like Nikola Jokic, because Nikola Jokic won his NBA championship and he's fine with that, and he really doesn't want to leave Denver. I think he's going to play in Denver probably 4 or 5 years, and he's going to be a player that probably retires early, because like basketball is just at the end of the day a job for him. And while it seems like he wants to win, I don't necessarily think that it's going to matter as much to the Denver Nuggets front office, because they know he's not going to be a player that's going to say, hey, actually, I want to request a trade, or that they're worried about leaving in free agency. So I do think that's going to be another reason where when you do have a star that's loyal, a la someone like Damian Lillard, someone like Nikola Jokic, someone like Giannis Antetokounmpo, who's been loyal to the Milwaukee Bucks for a long time, you don't really have a sense of urgency to build a championship team around them, because they're going to be there over the next few years. Like, does that excuse Jokic's play without Aaron Gordon? Absolutely not, though, because it's probably the worst Nikola Jokic series I have seen in his era, where he's been pretty much the regular season MVP every single year. The only difference with him, though, is he did get his NBA championship, and this is an era where it seems like teams are only really getting one championship. So all time, I feel like that will end up working in his favor, but like he's gonna be still compared to someone like James Harden, who is like a stat god, someone like Steve Nash as well when he won MVP.
Yeah, I think for Nikola Jokic, he's a guy that could be in a top 10 conversation if he wins one more ring. But with one ring, he's probably a top 25 player all time, which he's a guy that doesn't care about the all time conversation either. So I don't think this impacts him very much. But like for people like us and for the NBA media who are going to talk about this for the rest of time, what a ring for Nikola Jokic would mean is that he could go down as the greatest center of all time, potentially. The fact that he's been able to average a triple double multiple seasons on top of that, the fact that he's been able to win 3 MVPs, probably should have won the MVP that Joel Embiid won. Like, he's been the best player in the NBA for the last 5 years. He's mustered 1 championship. This past round, he's down 3-1 to the Timberwolves without Anthony Edwards. Like, this is definitely a stain on his legacy this postseason round. Does it impact him all time? I don't think so. I think we'll still look back and think he was the best player of the 2020s, but this has to be some sort of blemish on his resume this postseason. His shooting was down significantly. His 3-pointers were down. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is definitely going to be a stain on his legacy.
Yeah, and the Timberwolves have been a team that have figured out the Denver Nuggets, but I think this will be a stand as legacy. And I also think like people are looking at the Nuggets team like, well, what happened? What's different between the championship year? Like, I feel like Mike Malone definitely got fired too early, and I don't get why you're worried about losing an assistant head coach. Like,
Yeah.
why is that the priority?
Yeah, who cares at that point? And then, and it seems like that has been a huge mistake for them also because the coaching has regressed significantly since then. Mike Malone was one of the best coaches in the NBA. Where does David Adelman rank as far as top coaches in the NBA? As far as coaches that were in that first round, I would have taken JJ Redick over him. I would have taken Chris Finch over him. I would have taken Joe Mazzulla. I would have taken Mike Brown. Like, there's plenty of coaches I would have had over David Adelman just in this series, just in the teams that made the playoffs at this point.
Yeah, and he's trying to do this thing where he's like, did you see the clip where he got mad and he's trying to be like a tough guy?
Oh God, no. Let me see this.
But what, if any, impact do you think the end of Game 4 had on tonight's game?
I have no idea. I mean, obviously,
No idea.
guys didn't like how the game ended, but, stuff like that happens in playoff games. I don't know why he went and laid it in. Like I said, that's who he is. He's done that in the past. When I said that, I meant that there's a history of that. So I don't know. It's his decision. We didn't enjoy it.
But what?
Wow, my spine is chilling right now.
Do you
He
think
gives
it
me a
had
little
the-
bit
I
of
don't
like.
know.
He gives me a little bit of Rich or what's that coach that the Cardinals just fired? John Gannon.
Oh, Rich-
the
Jonathan
Yeah.
Gannon.
Yeah, he gives me a little bit of Jonathan Gannon. He gives me a little bit of Murph from Impractical Jokers, a little bit. But what a mess. Rip the Nuggets.
took
We
the
had
loss
them going to the finals as well. Blown opportunity for them.
Yeah, Aaron Gordon did get hurt, but at the same time, like, you knew he was a risk last year if he was going to be injured, so you definitely should have at least got some more depth at the forward position. Valanciunas just didn't cut it. But let's move on to another series, kind of quick to go over. The Cavs won all of their games at home, and the Raptors won all of their games at home. And we were kind of looking at the series, and I saw Cleveland win their first 2 games, and then Toronto won the 2 games in Toronto. I'm like, oh, this is exactly like the series that they had against the Orlando Magic, where it's just the home team is going to win every single game. We saw R.J. Barrett have a Kawhi Leonard, Tyrese Halliburton shot where he hit it at the end of Game 6 in Toronto, where it just bounced up, went in. That game ends up going to overtime. But like the real story is just Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen are terrible on the road, and they only play well at home. It's like Harden's a little bit worse on the road. So is Donovan Mitchell. Max Strus is also a little bit worse. Like, you don't see players like Sam Merrill and Dean Wade step up on the road, but when they're at home, all of those guys play great. And as a home team in the playoffs, the Cleveland Cavaliers have been really good. They blew out the Toronto Raptors in game 1. They won a closer game in game 2, but the Cavaliers pretty much controlled that game all the way through. Same thing with game 5, and then game 7 kind of just laid the smackdown on them, and then the talent disparity started to show up. Brandon Ingram was hurt, so he didn't play in that game, but it's just good season for the Raptors. Didn't really think they should have been in this situation against the Cavaliers, but it's just so strange, the night and day difference with this team at home and on the road.
Yeah, I mean, they get blown out in game 3. That's a wreck. And then I will say the game that they lost in game 6 and game 4 were closer. But again, you have poor shooting performances from James Harden. You have Jared Allen struggle. Evan Mobley struggle a little bit. I never really trust the Cavs very much. I don't think that they will beat the Pistons in this next round either. And we'll cover that later. But I just don't trust this Cavs team. And if anything, this Raptors series made me worry about them even more at this point. Because this is a team that they probably should have beat them in 5. I'll give the Raptors some credit. They probably should have stolen a game from them. But the Cavs are a much better team. They have Donovan Mitchell, who's a top 15 player, top 20 player in the NBA. Evan Mobley is one of the better centers in the league as well. You have James Harden, who's a Hall of Famer, alongside the Raptors, who have RJ Barrett. You have Brandon Ingram, who's a bucket, but that's about it. Who else is on that Raptors team that should scare you if you're the Cavs? Nobody. This Cavs team should have beat them in 5 at this point. But they played with their food. They can't beat anybody away from Cleveland. And, I mean, at this point, like, I don't trust them beating the Pistons at this point. Or the Knicks, or the Sixers.
Yeah, and the LeBronto legacy also lives on. Despite LeBron James no longer being on the roster, the Cavaliers have continued their postseason hex on the Toronto Raptors, having now won all 4 of their all-time matchups against Toronto.
LeBronto. I like that nickname.
LeBronto. It's because of Drake. So LeBron and Drake are friends, right? But, you know, the Cavaliers seem like they always beat the Toronto Raptors. And then they were playing not like us at the end of Game 7, too.
Ooh. Adding salt into the wounds. Yeah, I mean, the Cavs, they own the Raptors. The Celtics historically own the Sixers. We'll cover them next. But I just think, again, like, this should have been a 5-game series. They were much more talented, but it's going to show up in the series against the Pistons. The Pistons are going to be able to hold them down. If they can contain Donovan Mitchell, then I honestly think this Pistons team is going to beat them in 6.
Yeah, and I would say, like, too, like, the Cavs, we got what we expected from the Cavaliers, which was, you know, we had a good game from Max Strus. The Cavaliers ended up winning it in probably a longer series than they should have. But I think the real story is Toronto and Scotty Barnes kind of emerging. And then you have some good young players with Monokolo Feelies playing well. RJ Barrett looking like a pretty good player. But now they have some pieces like Barrett and Ingram that they could potentially trade for a star. And this Toronto Raptors team should continue to get better if they can get another legitimate scorer over the next few years. But this team did remind me kind of a younger Indiana Pacers team, but like they legitimately do have some good defenders. The problem is they just can't score enough to actually go 7 games in a series where the other team knows exactly what you're going to do.
Now, do you think the Raptors are one of those teams that could be in the sweepstakes for Giannis? I feel like Giannis is going to be the big talk of the summer. Do you see a team like the Raptors maybe packaging like a Jacob Podol or, you know, Jacoby Walter, something like that, getting a couple of guys together and getting a package for Giannis? Because Toronto, I think, makes sense for someone like Giannis. I can see him playing there. You pair him alongside RJ Barrett, you pair him alongside Scotty Barnes, and that's a pretty fun Raptors team. Are they going to be competing with the Celtics and the Knicks and the Sixers? We'll see. But that would be a fun matchup. I think that would be a fun team to see him potentially go to.
Well, the Raptors, I mean, say what you will about the Toronto Raptors as a franchise, but they still are the team when Kawhi Leonard said, I want out of San Antonio, and if you trade for me, I'm going to leave and go to LA the very next year. I'm not going to sign a long-term deal with you. And the Raptors were the team that's like, Doesn't matter. We're still going to trade for Kawhi Leonard. What happened? They won an NBA championship. So even if it's a gamble, if a star is going to stay there, they have proven that they will go out there and make a big swing for a star like Kawhi Leonard, who also had some injury issues. And Giannis right now, his biggest concern is he is injury liability. He's had some playoff meltdowns, but I do think, all things considered, that would make the Raptors a good candidate to go out there and trade for him. So I think you're spot on the money where the Raptors should be the biggest dark horse for Giannis, because realistically, if you're the Knicks, you already gave up so much for Mikal Bridges. You have Karl Anthony Towns. You should make the NBA Finals this year, and if you don't, I don't think Giannis, who's probably going to get injured in the playoffs, may never be healthy for a full finals run again. I don't think he's going to be your solution. So I do think Toronto is a good option.
Now, here's another interesting scenario. Another guy that could be traded this offseason is none other than Kawhi Leonard. And could the Toronto Raptors do another funny thing? Funny enough what they did in 2019 trading for him. Imagine if again in 2027 they trade for him again and they do another round with Kawhi Leonard after he leaves to go to LA. His LA tenure is pretty underwhelming. He goes back to Toronto against his will again, and there's another Raptors run with Kawhi Leonard. That's another arc that I would love to see.
So are they just trading him because of the story that they're investigating about the Clippers giving him $28 million outside of the cap? Or it was the company that, I forget the name of their owner from Microsoft.
Steve Ballmer.
Steve Ballmer created a shell company essentially to give Kawhi Leonard $28 million through an NGO.
I'm not sure. I thought the Clippers were blowing it up because they had traded James Harden, and then they made a few other trades, moved some players out. It sounds like to me they're going into rebuild at this point, and it feels like they're going to trade Kawhi Leonard. The rumors speculate that they're going to try to trade him. NBA rumors mean nothing as far as I'm concerned, because half of the time it means nothing. Just like LeBron's favorited to go to Chicago back in 2010, just like we've heard a million other rumors in the past. Celtics are going to trade for Paul George. I feel like of all of the four major sports, NBA rumors mean absolutely nothing until it actually happens. But if they are going to trade for him, that would be probably the funniest thing that could happen this offseason.
Yeah, I could see that would be funny if he goes back to the Raptors. I think he'd be a good fit on the Pacers, though. I think that would be where Kawhi would be probably at his best, but that'll be interesting. I mean, they did circumvent the cap, so maybe you're just kind of blowing it up like, you know what, we didn't make the NBA playoffs this year. We're trying to get a little bit younger. Let's swap Pascal Siakam for Kawhi Leonard. So I could see it.
I wouldn't hate that trade either.
And then we had Lakers Rockets. The Rockets made us watch 2 more games. The Lakers let it go to a game 6, which was awful. So they were up 3-0. They lost the last game in Houston. Then they lost in LA and went back to Houston and ended up winning it. But that series is just, why are we letting this go 6 games? And then Kevin Durant played the most minutes in the regular season, and then he didn't play more than 1 game in this series. It seemed like Kevin Durant just didn't want any of the smoke. He seems like he's fine just coming there, picking up a paycheck. And, you know, he was out with the injury, but he played in game 2, and it didn't seem like he re-aggravated anything or he was moving any differently than he was all season long. So that was definitely confusing as well. So definitely should be some investigations there. But I honestly have said this season really doesn't matter. This series really doesn't matter because whoever wins it is just going to get swept by the Thunder.
Yeah, 100%. And, I mean, what I'll say about the Lakers, which is not a very unpopular take at this point, LeBron winning a series against a team that was plus 600 to win, credits to him. He's 41. He led the team without Luka and Austin Reeves and did it with the Luke Kennards of the world, the Marcus Smarts of the world, Jared Vanderbilts. So I'll give the Lakers credit there, beating the Rockets, who I would say the Rockets, with with the Lakers not having Luka and Austin Reeves, the Rockets have a better roster. Alfred Sengun, he's a guy that has a lot of potential, but this Rockets team's a mess. It seems like there's some chemistry issues there. A lot of younger players clashing with the older players. Kevin Durant not liking his teammates. It seems like there's a lot of drama around Houston as well. So I'm interested to see if Kevin Durant is on the move again this offseason. But the main takeaway, credits to LeBron. Winning another series, has the most playoff series wins of any player. But, yeah, they shouldn't have gone 6 games.
Yeah, and LeBron is now top 10. He's the only player that ranks top 10 in total points, rebounds, assists, and field goals made. So he's continuing to make history. He's 41 years old now. So definitely credit to the Lakers to win that series, but it was just kind of a uninteresting, boring, sloppy series to watch. Where watching Marcus Smart and Luke Kennard go off, and just the Thompson brothers. I get Asor Thompson in Detroit isn't your main ball handler, but in Houston, Amon Thompson is the main ball handler for them, and they are both tremendous athletes, have tremendous IQ and instincts on defense, but man, are the Thompson brothers an eyesore on offense. And when that's your second option for Houston, it just made the series kind of unwatchable at times.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, this Rockets team, what do the Rockets do from here at this point? Because you have Kevin Durant on a 4-year deal. You have Sengun, who has promise. I believe that Sengun can be a very good player someday. I think he is still a good player now. But where do they go from here at this point? I feel like they need another big man alongside
They have Steven
Sengun.
Adams, who's hurt, and they have Fred VanVleet, who is injured. So they're essentially punting on this playoff series. You know what? We're going to rest Kevin Durant so Ime Udoka doesn't get fired, and we're going to say, hey, you know what? We're going to bring back Steven Adams and then move Sengun to power forward, then have KD, Amon Thompson, and then Fred VanVleet, who's going to be our point guard. And then we'll finally have a legitimate ball handler, and then hopefully Reed Shepherd improves, because he was the biggest fall off from the regular season to the playoffs. And I think that's the biggest thing that people don't take into an account when they're picking these NBA playoff series is we both picked the Lakers in the series. And the reason is if you struggle to shoot in the regular season, you're going to be terrible in the NBA playoffs. And how many times have we just seen these role players like for the Dallas Mavericks as each round goes off? Like PJ Washington continues to struggle to shoot as it goes on. You have these teams that just get ice cold, like the Houston Rockets, and those were good shooting teams where sometimes in the playoffs you just struggle to shoot and you struggle offensively. So I do think like the shooting in the regular season is much different than it is in the NBA playoffs, and usually guys get a couple points worse in the playoffs, and it's rare that you see someone like Jamal Murray or Paulo improve each time they get into the playoffs.
Every once in a while, though, you'll see a role player. Like, that's kind of how Alex Caruso made his money, Tyler Hero with the Heat, Max Strus. Like, you see a couple of these guys that elevate their game in the postseason. But for a lot of these role players, I feel like it's going to make or break whether or not they get paid a massive contract. But for the Rockets, I feel like a lot of them took a step backwards in the postseason, struggled from shooting. Reed Shepherd in Game 6 shot 4 of 19 and just took a big step back there. But I just think when the lights are bright, especially in the NBA, like shooting is definitely a lot of it is mental. Your physical memory does matter to some extent, but for the most part, it's your mental focus and kind of how locked in you are with how good of a shooter you'll be in the postseason, especially when the pressure's bright. And a lot of these role players crumble under the pressure.
Yeah. But let's go to the elephant in the room. This is kind of the last series we'll talk about in the first round that's interesting. Then we'll briefly give our predictions for the second round, get into these new lottery rules. But the real elephant in the room is Boston blowing a 3-1 lead. And this wasn't just any 3-1 lead. This was the first time in Celtics history that they ever blew a 3-1 lead in Celtics history. And then this was the first time, I believe, since the 80s that they have lost to the Philadelphia 76ers in the playoffs. This is the first time that they've lost to the process in the playoffs as well. And really, the elephant in the room has been the three-point shooting. Derek White's shooting percentage falling off a cliff this year, shooting below 40% from the field. People are talking about Joe Mazzulla, but there has been a bizarre pattern that has been unfolding, and it's pretty hard to ignore at this point. I got to talk about Jaylen Brown because his playoff net rating swing has been pretty significant. Brown has recorded a negative net rating swing in 7 of his 9 career postseason appearances. This was also his first round loss, and this means that more often than not, the Celtics have statistically performed better with him on the bench than on the floor. And regular season, this trend isn't limited to the playoffs. He also has a negative on-off rating in 7 of his 10 regular seasons. And then there's also the Tatum gap. You want to know this crazy stat? In contrast with Jason Tatum, over his 120 postseason games together, the Celtics are 50-23 when Tatum takes more shots than Brown. 50-23.
Jesus Christ.
When Brown is the primary scorer, they are only 21-26 in the playoffs. So they have a losing record when Jaylen Brown takes more shots than Jason Tatum.
Jesus Christ. I didn't realize the stats were that jarring.
And then this series specifically, in the final 3 games, he was a negative 57 over the last 3 games of the series as Philadelphia erased a 3-1 deficit despite scoring 33 points in Game 7. Brown was a negative 16. And my biggest problem with the Celtics is at the end of Game 7, was I the only one who saw Neemias Queta running wide open down the middle on a fast break when it was 98 to 99 or 99 to 100. They were only down by 1. They could have taken the lead. Queta was open for a dunk, and I'm like, oh, I could see Tatum making that pass if he had the ball 10 out of 10 times. So he's like, no, Pritchard's been a dog all year long. He passed the ball. He clanks a 3 at the end of it. Brown clanks a 3. And then Derek White also clanks a 3 at the end of that game. In a one where there were some crazy swings, but the Celtics had plenty of chances to still win in Game 7. But you were in the bonus with 6 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter. And you know what you decide to do? Jack up threes. You know what you get in the bonus if you get fouled? Free throws. You know what you should do if you get free throws every time you get fouled? Drive to the basket. As Tommy Heinsohn used to say, former, rest in peace, God rest his soul, Tommy Heinsohn, former Celtics commentator, when you don't have anything going on offense, just drive to the basket, especially when you're only down by 1 point. But it was honestly like they were trying to lose this game. And then here's the audacity. After having a negative net rating out of 7 of his 9 playoff performances, 7 of his 10 regular seasons, say, we lost 3-1, but this is actually my favorite regular season. What?
Insanity. Yeah, I didn't realize that the stats were that jarring. So he's been a negative plus minus in 7 of his 9 postseason runs, and then you said 7 of his 10 career years, like 10 seasons as well.
Of his regular season, when he is the on-off rating with Jaylen Brown, he has a negative net rating in 7 of his 10 regular season games, and 50-23 when Tatum takes more shots, 21-26 with Brown. They have a losing record when Brown is the primary guy.
That's insane. Yeah, and the thing is, like, the Celtics, this isn't the first time this has happened to the Celtics where they rely so heavily on the 3 where it's also their biggest killer. It's what can help ultimately make them win 60 games a year. But when you shoot 28% from 3 in Game 5, and then in Game 7 you shoot, like another 27% from 3, like, this is what their biggest killer is. They shot 100 more threes than the Sixers did this series, and they blew this 3-1 lead because of it. Obviously, Tatum being hurt in Game 7 hurt their chances. I think if he's there, they win that game. But the biggest thing is, like, that Jaylen Brown stat, what do they do? Because Jaylen Brown's the most expensive contract in the NBA. Obviously, they've won a title together. They probably want to keep that core together. But now that Jaylen Brown has tasted what it feels like to be the number one guy for that regular season, does he want to go back to being that second man? Honestly, with what his comments show, no. So what do they do from here? Do they trade Jaylen Brown? Do they go after someone like Giannis to pair with Tatum? Do they go after someone like Kawhi potentially? Like, how do they fix this problem for the Celtics?
Yeah, and I don't necessarily know if it's the biggest problem in the world, but it definitely seems like, wow, he's talking about how he enjoyed this season the most when he blew a 3-1 lead, and they had plenty of chances to win in Game 7. And I get, Joel Embiid is flopping, but there's also another reason why Joel Embiid falls every time on his back is because his knees are so bad. Like Kyle Lowry said he was shocked when he saw Joel Embiid's knees that he could even walk. And then he's like talking about, oh, the refs, like, I've seen Jaylen Brown flop. Does Jaylen Brown not say, hey, and one every time he gets to the hoop? Like, are we saying nobody in the NBA flops? Like, your teammates with Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum is always talking to the refs. I get you have players like SGA. We've had the Hardens in the past. We had LeBron James, who seemingly got every call. And, if you think the refs are out to get you, calling them out every single time and being hostile to the refs, not necessarily a great way to get on their good side either. So it's like, at the end of the day, he is someone who was elite in the regular season, but we definitely have seen a improvement in Jason Tatum's passing. We've seen an improvement with how he's been able to start getting triple doubles, and when Jason Tatum is on the floor, the offense is more efficient. They're better when Jason Tatum takes more shots, but also like with Jaylen Brown, he hasn't really gotten over his turnover issue still. Like, this has plagued him his entire career, where people made fun of him for not having a left hand, and then he got left hand surgery and he was actually injured there. But like, this is a guy who we lost the finals to the Golden State Warriors because him and Tatum were turning the ball over. Jason Tatum has become a better passer, but Jaylen Brown is not instinctively as good of a passer. And then also, like, he's a good on-ball defender, but he's terrible off the ball. Like, there are plenty of times where players would just get by him, or he had a defensive lap. If he's not on the ball, he's not as focused on defense.
Yeah. I just don't know what the solution is for the Celtics, because it seems like the rumors are they're most likely going to trade Derek White this offseason, and his regression was pretty dramatic, especially in the postseason, shooting under 30% from the field. But like, for the Celtics, this relationship with Tatum and Brown has always been kind of strange. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum both drafted pretty close to each other. They both came up together. They both won their title together. But their games don't necessarily always complement each other either. And I feel like this is an issue that's only going to get worse for them, especially now that Jaylen Brown has tasted the main guy, just being basically the man on the team. Like, how does that carry over into next season when Tatum's fully healthy and his calf is fully functioning again? Like, how does this team? I mean, Tatum's kind of taken more of the facilitator role, but he is the better scorer overall also. So this could potentially be a situation that we have to monitor pretty closely in Boston, because I think the Jaylen Brown-Tatum breakup is closer than we think.
Yeah, it's interesting, too, because it seems like Jaylen Brown hits more clutch shots than Jason Tatum, but when you need a big game in an elimination game, Jason Tatum has had more. He's set the NBA record for most points in a Game 7 versus the Philadelphia 76ers, and that was when they were down 3-2 to the Sixers. And Jason Tatum was the real person who was guarding Embiid. And then he also had that massive game in Milwaukee. They were down 3-2 to Milwaukee again, and then he dropped 46 points against Giannis and then outdueled him. But then you have do you remember I think it was Game 1 versus the Indiana Pacers. It looked like the Celtics were about to lose, and then Jaylen Brown hits a ridiculous corner three. So it seems like at times, despite the plus minus, Jaylen Brown can be a more clutch player, but you kept saying, keep doubting us all season long. You kept saying, people say I'm not a number one. We don't have Jason Tatum this year. I'm going to prove the haters wrong. Well, if you talk like this, it's similar to J. Cole, like, I'll battle rap anybody. Okay, it's game 7. Take over. It's a 1-point game. Oh, I don't want to. I'm scared. It's like, okay. All right, you had your moment to do it by yourself, and then after this game, after blowing a 3-1 lead, when it was a 1-point game, it wasn't like Jason Tatum got hurt and then you fell apart. You're saying, this is my team, this is my favorite season, and then you're basically saying, like, I'm in the driver's seat now on your stream after the game where you had those 3 guys standing behind him with sunglasses. But that stream after the game was just very bizarre, and he ended up deleting it after. So it's like, it's just a very interesting situation this year. And this is, you know, Brad Stevens has a lot of decisions to make this year. For this was supposed to be a gap year. Jason Tatum came back, looked like himself, and then everyone in the media, including myself, like, was like, okay, the Celtics can go to the finals. And then Jason Tatum ends up having a setback where he has knee soreness. You definitely don't want to play around with that, coming off an Achilles injury. And then the Celtics they're the first team to start 3 players in a playoff game that don't score. So you have that with Shireman, Luka Garza, and Ron Harper. And then Jaylen Brown has an opportunity to take over, and then he can't find Keita, who's wide open, to get the lead in that game. And then they stop driving the ball when they're in the bonus. Like, that's the most frustrating part about this Game 7.
Yeah, I don't understand why they did that. Plenty of opportunities missed there. How do you feel about their reliance on the three-point shot? Because realistically, in each of those games, right, Game 7, they shoot 27% from the 3. In Game 6, they shoot 33% from 3. And then Game 5, they shoot 28%. And all these games, they're shooting 40 to 50-plus threes in this game. Do you think that the Celtics are almost too focused on the 3? Because for me, at some point, there's teams like the Warriors who kind of perfected it, and then there's other teams that obviously implemented it well. It feels like the Celtics are what happens when it gets to a certain extreme where you're missing out on open layups, you're missing out on potential free throws to shoot a 3, and you're not hitting any threes in this game either. You can't make a shot to save your life. I feel like the Celtics are a bit too extreme on the 3 to the point where it's actually killing them in the process.
You know, the biggest problem with it is it works in the regular season, is the reliance on the 3-point shot works on so much in the regular season. Is when a team like the Celtics or the Houston Rockets in their past is cold in the playoffs from 3, they don't know what to do. It's like, it was very simple what the Celtics needed to do in that Game 7, which is drive the ball when you're in the bonus. You're going to get fouled, 25% of the time, and then you probably win that game if he makes the pass to Keita in the fast break instead of Peyton Pritchard to the corner. Like, then you're probably in a much better situation to win this game. But the problem is, the regular season, it's a lot easier to hit threes than it is in the NBA playoffs, especially when you're in a Game 7. You get into Game 5 or 6, it's a lot harder for those shots to go down, and then you really don't have an answer, and then none of your other players are developing as much. What made someone like Peyton Pritchard special, and is why I was kind of disappointed with him in this series, was his mid-range game. Like, his ball handling skills were so good. He wasn't trying to attack the paint, break down the defense, and he wasn't taking as many turnaround iso ball mid-range jumpers. You can credit Philadelphia's defense, but at the same time, it's like, it just makes it easy for the defense when your 3-pointers aren't falling. And then in the regular season, when it works, it just makes you more predictable in the playoffs, and you don't have as many options to go to at the end of the game. It's kind of just Jaylen Brown or bust, and then Derek White is undersized, and he's looked pretty small in the past 2 years in the playoffs now. Going up against Philadelphia, he looks slow versus Maxey, and then he just looked way too small against the New York Knicks now, especially if Jason Tatum's out and you have to play Pritchard at the end of the game for some scoring as well. So I definitely think, like, the 3-point shot, it just gives the defense a break, and it's just very predictable at this point now.
Yeah, 100%. I also think for the Sixers, too, Joel Embiid, a guy that has missed a lot of time the last 5 years, hasn't always been clutch in the postseason. He just kind of manhandled the Celtics in those 4 games. I mean, he had 34 points in Game 7. And for the Celtics, another person to put blame on, but Nikola Vucevic. He didn't play very well at all. He was a guy that they went after. I thought, this is a guy that potentially could have enough size to potentially contain the Embiids of the world, the Giannis's of the world. He isn't anywhere to be found in this series. Joel Embiid kind of dominated the series, and he kind of just got whatever he wanted. We had in Game 7, he had 34 points, and then Game 6, he had 19 a little bit. But like Joel Embiid in this series just kind of dominated them. They didn't have enough big men to contain him. Sixers had a lot of size as well. Tyrese Maxey, he's got decent size. VJ Edgecombe has been good for them. Paul George. So I just felt like this was kind of a matchup nightmare for them, especially with how Joel Embiid was playing.
Yeah, and I was concerned about this matchup, not even because of Joel Embiid. It's just because I saw what the Knicks did to the Celtics, and this team with the Sixers felt similar. It's like Maxey and Edgecombe together just seems like a duo that will be able to win a couple games in Boston. And the most disappointing thing of all about the Celtics is they're terrible at home. Like with this Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum team, like in Boston of all places, they have now lost, I think they've lost a majority of their game twos. I forget the number. I think they've lost 6 game twos at home in Boston, and then they lost 3 games at home. They lost game 2, 5, and 7 in Boston, and then they won 2 games in Philadelphia either. So this is also a team that struggles at home.
Yeah, which I feel like is a place that you should be thriving in. They were much better away this current year as well. They were 26 and 15 away from home, but just a missed opportunity for them. A lot of people are putting their pitchforks out for Joe Mazzulla. I wouldn't go too far to say that quite yet. I think he maybe needs to adapt his three-point strategy a little bit more, but I think they just didn't have enough size to beat the Sixers, and they relied too heavily on the three-point shot. Jaylen Brown was inefficient when it mattered, and then Tatum's injury that played a part in it as well.
Yeah, and Joe Mazzulla's like, well, we're going to play the margins, and we think the margins are going to work out in our favor each time. Like, okay. I don't really want to put my faith in margins, though. I want to put it in a better game plan and better strategies. Like, he's like getting into the numbers a little bit too much at this point, and sometimes a team like the Knicks is just bigger than you, like they were last year. And the Celtics also, when they won the finals, they had Drew Holiday kind of at the end of his prime. They somehow got a really good finals series out of Kristaps Porzingis, and they had Derek White playing the best basketball of his career, and then Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown on top of that. So they just had a overwhelming amount of talent, and they still struggled to beat the Indiana Pacers before Tyrese Halliburton got hurt. Like, if Halliburton didn't get hurt, I think that still would have been a very different series. So, like, you went out there and beat the Mavericks. Like, okay, like, the Mavericks had no really answers for you matchup-wise, but when they did win the finals, it was by an overwhelming amount of talent. And if they win another finals, too, like, I don't think they can necessarily rely on Tatum and Brown to just go out there and elevate this team to victory if they're going to be so reliant on the three-point shot and they don't get some bigger guards on this team, because I do think like the past 2 years, Derek White has looked small. Like, he's a really good defender and he goes out there and try, but if he's going to shoot this bad and he's going to be undersized against a team like the Knicks, he's going to be undersized if they ended up playing the Pistons too, because Cade Cunningham is 6'6", and they really couldn't do anything with him after Wagner got hurt. So it's like, well, yeah, he's definitely has to go, and you need to upgrade your size at the guard position now.
Yeah. So the Celtics have a very interesting offseason to be had. But now that the first round is over, we just had 2 of the games just finished just now. Timberwolves just beat the Spurs 104-102, and the Knicks blow out the Sixers in game 1. We now are in the semifinals here. We got Lakers and Thunder, Timberwolves, Spurs, Pistons, Cavs, and Knicks, Sixers. So now that everybody has moved on and we're entering into the final 8 here, how do we shake out? Let's start out with, I guess we can stick with the Sixers and go Knicks and Sixers. Knicks just blew them out in game 1. How do you see this Knicks and Sixers series playing out?
Yeah, I think this one will go 6 games. I will take the Knicks in 6 as well. The 76ers beat the Celtics, but the Celtics, you know, Jason Tatum got hurt. This was a team that overachieved in the regular season, and then they weren't expecting Joel Embiid to come back and be this good. And when Sixers beat the Celtics, it was the Celtics were having trouble scoring. It wasn't necessarily the 76ers were going out there and blowing them out. So when the Celtics did win, they would just have crazy shooting nights and they got really hot. And I don't think the New York Knicks are a type of team that are necessarily going to go super ice cold on a given night from three and then kind of just be floating and drifting through the game like the Celtics will. And they now kind of see this as their best opportunity to get to an NBA Finals. Karl Anthony Towns is easily playing the best basketball I've ever seen him play, especially in the NBA playoffs. He's a legitimate matchup for Joel Embiid. Mitchell Robinson has size. And then Jalen Brunson, like, this is just his year to go out there, get it done. I'm not going to take too much from this blowout win because I have seen, the Celtics blow out the 76ers in 2 separate games, but I think this will be a tough, competitive 6 games, but I do think the Knicks take it. I will take like Karl Anthony Towns, like we'll be able to match up with Embiid, and will Embiid be able to make it through the entire series too? It's like another question mark. Like I felt like that series versus the Celtics was definitely more of an outlier for the 76ers historically. Like that was Joel Embiid's first Game 7 win, and the Celtics had it in their hands at the end of Game 7. Like that doesn't give me a ton of confidence where the Celtics team is probably a little bit worse than they were last year, lost to this Knicks team, and we're struggling with Jason Tatum playing. It's not going to give me a ton of confidence that the 76ers are going to go out there and then suddenly take a pound of flesh out of the Knicks when this is the Knicks' probably only opportunity to get to and win an NBA Finals.
Yeah, I agree. I think also the Knicks are a worse matchup for the Sixers, whereas the Celtics, they weren't playing Vucevic. They had Jordan Walsh. They had Baylor Shireman, where the Knicks, they have Karl Anthony Towns that can play onside Joel Embiid. You have Anunoby who can defend Paul George and the Tyrese Maxeys of the world. Jalen Brunson is consistently a playoff performer. He had 35 in this game. He's been one of the best playoff performers over the last 3 or 4 years for the Knicks. And Josh Hart. What's that?
He gets a generous whistle too.
He does get generous whistles as well. But then you have the Josh Harts of the world, Mikal Bridges. I just feel like the Knicks have a lot more talent on their team, and I feel like they're a matchup nightmare for the Sixers. I do think that the Sixers are going to come out in Game 2, and it'll be a lot closer. But this Knicks team, especially with how they handled the Hawks the last 3 games, they gave me a lot of confidence there. The losses that they had were by 1 score. So I think the Sixers can steal some games from them, but ultimately I do think the Knicks beat them in 6 as well. I just think right now the Knicks just feel like a team of destiny in the East. The Celtics are gone. The Pistons struggled against the Magic. And then you have the Cavaliers that are left there. I think whoever ends up making it out, the Pistons and Cavs, I think the Knicks are the team that makes it out of the East.
Yeah, I think Mike Brown also is a good coach as well. We saw Joe Mazzulla, like he kind of just lives or dies by the 3. Mike Brown does this thing called making adjustments. And I think if there's any team that's going to get you ready for the Philadelphia 76ers as kind of a Sixers light team, it would be the Atlanta Hawks, especially like CJ McCollum with how he changes levels. His technical abilities kind of similar to defending someone like Tyrese Maxey. No, he's a little bit more athletic. And then Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Like, if you want to prepare for VJ Edgecombe and Tyrese Maxey, like, the second best thing you can get in the first round is probably going to be CJ McCollum and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. So I do think that series is going to be a similar matchup for the Knicks there. And then also, Joel Embiid, after the Celtics series, literally offering to pay for Philadelphia 76ers fans to go to their own home games because Philadelphia's been a home away from home for the New York Knicks because it's not a far train ride at the end of the day, and Knicks fans can travel, and they're already paying. You brought the tickets up, what, $400 in Madison Square Garden? So if they go to a Sixers game, it's probably going to be even cheaper to go see them. So you already have Joel Embiid like, I'll pay for your ticket if you want to come to the game so we don't have too many Knicks fans here. So it's like, okay, you already lost. And like, I didn't see as many Celtics fans as Knicks fans. So like the Knicks fans, I feel like, they're really feeling it this year. Anne Hathaway showing up in a OG Anunoby jersey courtside. Can't beat that.
Yeah. Yeah, nothing beats that. And I'm looking at the tickets now. The next game for the Sixers or for the Madison Square Garden starts at $400. It starts for the Sixers at $260. So I mean that's
260.
$140. That's $140 difference right there.
The train ticket's what, like $20?
It's only an hour and a half drive from Philly to New York, so
It's not
people can
bad
just
at all.
drive there. Yeah, so I think Knicks fans also are a little crazy. I think of all the New York teams, I think when it comes to like the mania of New York sports, I think the Knicks are kind of the epicenter of that, where they're a little bit delusional, like any good sports fan is. They travel well, and yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of Knicks fans in Philadelphia in games 3 and 4. So yeah, I think the Knicks win this series pretty comfortably. It'll be a close series. I think the Sixers will steal 2 games, but I just think the Knicks in the East are the team that makes it out of the East so far.
Yeah, and as a Celtics fan, I can say unbiasedly if the Knicks made the NBA Finals, it would be cinematic. And I do think they match up okay with the Thunder if the Thunder end up making the finals, especially like you have someone like Karl Anthony Towns, he can go head to head with Chet. And then you can also, if the Thunder decide to play Hartenstein and Chet together, you can play Mitchell Robinson and Karl Anthony Towns together as well, and kind of match their big lineup. And then Brunson and SGA are kind of the 2 lead masturbators in the NBA, so you'd have them going head to head. So I do think like NBA Finals in Madison Square Garden would definitely be cinematic, especially you would have all of the celebrities courtside. I don't know how many of them would travel to OKC, but we'll see. It could be Minnesota, though. We don't know.
Or San Antonio. Or maybe, just maybe, in a crazy world, maybe it's the Lakers. Lakers fans seem to think so. We might as well talk about Thunder's Lakers next.
Week to week. I love that. Week to week.
Week to week. So we'll see how the health of Luka Doncic. If Luka Doncic is there, I don't think it makes too much of a difference. The Thunder overwhelmed the Suns, which was not a surprise to anybody, even people in Phoenix as well. But I'd like to think the Lakers can steal a game, maybe 2. But the Thunder are just far away. They're just better all around. They did win 64 games. They have the shooting. They have the size. They have the best player on the court as well. Multiple players that are the best player on the court. So Thunder should beat the Lakers. I think 5 games is fair, but maybe the Lakers can steal a game, make it 6. But Thunder should take care of business pretty easily.
Yeah. Do you think the Lakers are like that much better than the Suns? Like, I think the Suns could have got 2 games on this Lakers team, probably, maybe 3. I think if the Suns and Lakers played, maybe it would be like a 7-game series. But I just think this is a total wash, even without Jaylen Williams. Like, you have an older LeBron, and they dropped 2 games to the Houston Rockets when they were up 3-0. And honestly, the Rockets should have won Game 3. And there were moments in Game 2 in LA they could have won. And like, this is a series that easily should have gone 7 games. And without Kevin Durant, I think the Rockets, definitely fumbled on some opportunities to win the series. Now, that definitely is the veteran leadership of LeBron, but there's a certain point where the talent just takes over. And one thing that the Thunder can do that the Rockets can't, it's this thing that's very important to basketball. It's called scoring and shooting the basketball. Yeah, they do this thing called scoring a lot better than the Houston Rockets. And, Şengün hasn't really figured out that the ball's supposed to go in the hoop, and that's what makes it a 2-point or 3-point play. But the Thunder actually know how to do that. So I don't think Marcus Smart and Luke Kennard are going to be able to get it done versus this team. Like, Austin Reeves is like, okay, but I feel like Austin Reeves is only elite when Luka plays with him. So like, Luka definitely elevates Austin Reeves games, but when he is the number 1 scoring option, he's not as good as when Luka's on the floor.
Austin Reeves, I'll give him credit. He's a bucket. He can score pretty well, but this Thunder's team, they're the best defensive team. They're one of the best offensive teams as well. For a Lakers team that outside of LeBron, you're relying on Roy Hachimura, you're relying on Jared Vanderbilt, Marcus Smart, DeAndre Ayton if he is motivated enough. So, yeah, it is a matchup nightmare. The Lakers are going to steal a game, but this honestly, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, this is probably going to go 5.
Yeah, I don't think it'll even go 5. I think the Thunder will take care of this in 4. Like SGA has just been going out there and win. And honestly, the Thunder have been an absolute machine. It went 6 games. The Thunder have a lot of rest. There's some moments where it looked kind of close, but like at the end of the day, I don't see any reason why the Lakers should win a game versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. Like they haven't showed any cracks in the armor so far.
Yeah, I will say like any given postseason game, somebody shoots cold. I mean, we saw it in the Celtics series 3 consecutive games. If the Thunder get cold one game, that's where I see them taking a game. Or if there's some LeBron masterclass, but I'll give the Lakers a game. But yeah, I think it's 5 games for the Thunder.
Yeah, 5. I'm going a hard 4. I just don't see it. Like even if the Thunder, the Thunder, like there's so many players on their team that are good. Like they can go 8 to 10 guys deep in a playoff game, and they have so many players where like the Thunder never have these moments like the Celtics where the entire team goes cold. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, they are a well-oiled machine. There's no doubt about it, and that's why they're the favorites. But if we move to their competitors here, what's that?
Let's go to like Cavs and Pistons.
Cavs, Pistons. Yeah, 2 teams. Pistons just overcame a 3-1 deficit. Cavs played with their food with the Raptors and couldn't beat anybody at home. Yeah, I mean, the Pistons are a better defensive team. Cade Cunningham, highest scoring player in these postseasons so far. I really don't trust the Cavs, and I have no reason to. They are the 2020s equivalent of the 2010 Raptors at this point. And until they show me why I should be wrong, I'm never going to pick them once when they get past the first round to pick them. Even though I like Donovan Mitchell and I like James Harden, for Detroit, you have Cade Cunningham. Can Jaren Duran turn things around and be better in this series against Evan Mobley? I think the Pistons win in 6 more at this case. I think they're better defensively. Can Duncan Robinson step up? I just don't trust the Cavs. They can't win away from Cleveland, and I think the Pistons can steal one in Cleveland. So I'm taking the Pistons in 6.
Yeah, I think this one goes 7. I think the Pistons should win the series. There's like I have like one of those feelings deep down though, like when you pick an NFL game, like I don't know why this team is going to win, but I think they will for the Cavaliers because when you look at the way the Pistons beat the Magic, it's historic. Like the Magic were historically bad where the Pistons are the first team in an elimination game on the road to have a 24-point comeback. The Pistons go 1 for 20 in a fourth quarter, and we saw, the Cavaliers do similar things against the Rockets. Like, the thing that the Pistons have going for them is I don't think they have anyone who can really compete or stop Cade Cunningham. The best shot that the Orlando Magic had was when Franz Wagner was guarding him, and that's just because he's a legitimate 6'9" forward. He is bigger than Cade. He can bother him with his length, but like you look at Donovan Mitchell, Dean Wade, Max Strus, Sam Merrill, James Harden. I don't think any of these guys can guard Cade, so that's the positive for Detroit. The negative is I don't think that there's going to be a quarter where they go 1 for 20 from the field, and I don't think that there's going to be a situation where the Cleveland Cavaliers only score 19 points, and also in the front court they can match your size, and they're actually bigger than you. When you have Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen there. So they haven't been as good on the road, but I do think they're going to take this series a little bit more seriously than the Raptors. I think the Pistons win in 7, but I don't think that the people should just think that the Pistons are automatically going to win this series. I think the Cavaliers should be competitive. I think we're due for Donovan Mitchell to ramp it up a little bit. James Harden struggled. He had his moments in this series, so that's why I think they'll ultimately lose. But at the same time, it's like the Magic were historically bad when they blew that lead. I think the only difference in this series is that the Pistons won't get down 3-1, and they'll start out 2-0.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think as far as the Magic. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for the Cavs to have some sort of struggle from the field because, I mean, we've seen James Harden get really cold in key playoff games. We've seen Donovan Mitchell get really cold. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I don't know if they score 8 points in a quarter. I don't know if I can think of any playoff team to ever score 8 points in a quarter outside of what we saw with the Magic. So do I think they have as low as a low? No, but I think there are going to be some lows for this Cavs team in a few of these games. Pistons in 6. I can see it going 7 games. I think 6 and 7 games, it's like whatever happens, I guess. That doesn't make too much of a difference to me. But I'll take the Pistons in 6. I think they close it out.
Yeah, Pistons in 6, like definitely fair. I do think it goes 7, especially with how bad the Magic were, and as soon as their second best, first best player, wherever you want to put Wagner, goes down, it was definitely a different series there. Also, I think, the Magic struggled to score the ball at times, and I think the Cavaliers are just better than the Magic offensively. The only thing is going to be, I think Harden's going to be a real liability in this series, so I think we may see a little bit more Dennis Schroeder, and Dennis Schroeder had a big impact on those 2 games that they won versus the Knicks last year, so I do think Dennis Schroeder is probably going to be a sleeper in this series, and he's going to be the X factor for the Cavaliers off the bench.
Yeah,
Especially because Jenkins for the Pistons didn't play well. Jaylen Duren didn't play well. Asor Thompson got banged up at times. Like, he plays like kind of a dangerous brand of basketball. And like, if Duncan Robinson isn't on, like, Cade Cunningham can go for 45 and it might not matter on some nights. Like, it's like the Cavs can get cold, but like also the Pistons can too. So that's why I think that the Pistons win in 7. But I do have like that feeling deep down that the Cavaliers might actually come out on top.
Yeah, it would be cool to see. I think it's a better story for the NBA if we have Donovan Mitchell, James Harden, Evan Mobley get out of the second round, because they haven't made it out of the second round yet. If they can break through to the conference finals, face the Knicks, I think as far as what the NBA would want, I think a Cavs and Knicks series is a lot more interesting than a Pistons team that is kind of that tough, gritty, not a very great scoring team. Because outside of Cade Cunningham, they don't really have a true number 2 scorer, where the Cavs have a minimum of 3, if I just think of their big 3, that can get a bucket any given possession. I think the NBA prefers the Cavs and Knicks, but I do think the Pistons still beat them in 6. But NBA probably wants the Cavs to win this one.
Yeah, if the Pistons do win the series, I still think it'd be the same thing as last year, and they would lose to the Knicks in 6. Like, this, like, Jaylen Duren has showed that he's a liability in the playoffs. You don't have Dennis Schroeder, so someone like Jenkins off your bench hasn't been necessarily great for you, and those players typically keep getting worse as time goes on in the NBA playoffs. And then this is a team that played really hard in the regular season, and if you play hard on defense, you can win a lot of games in the regular season. So that's going to benefit this team as well, and that's why they're the number 1 seed. And then, Asur Thompson can't shoot. So I do think, like, if you end up matching up with the New York Knicks, who I think is going to beat the Philadelphia Sixers, it's going to be a repeat of last year, and you win in 6 because it's literally Cade Cunningham or bust still on offense. And they haven't figured anything out last year. Like, you can't win playing iso ball. I watched Damian Lillard play in Portland, and it's starting to remind me with Cade Cunningham with the Pistons. Like, if you don't have a legit number 2 scorer, you can't get past the conference finals. We've seen this with Anthony Edwards the past 2 years.
Yeah, just not having that second scorer, that is big. And honestly, like, you look at the Pistons roster outside of Cade Cunningham, I could start to talk myself into I could start to talk myself into the Cavs, because I think roster-wise, if we look at every player, I do think the Cavs have a better roster than the Pistons. Pistons have a different style of basketball that could slow down the Cavs, but as far as, like, outside of Cade Cunningham, they don't really have. They have the defensive players there, but not necessarily offensively.
Yeah, so literally, you'd have to, like, play the strategy where we're gonna stop everyone else and then just play Cade really tough into contested shots 1-on-1. And if he beats us, he beats us. But we're gonna make sure like no one else is gonna be able to get off in the series. Or you say like make literally anyone else on the team beat us, and we're just gonna trap him every single time and get the ball out of his hands. But if the Cavaliers do win this, you're going to have a huge series from Schroeder, and then Max Strus is also going to be the X factor off the bench, because if Max Strus is able to match up with Cade Cunningham and bother him defensively, I think if anyone can guard him outside of Dean Wade, it's going to be Max Strus. So like Max Strus has to hit threes, stay out of foul trouble, and be the primary person who's picking up Cade Cunningham and picking him up 94 feet every single time.
Yeah, I agree. But this is going to be a good series. But I think the best series that we're all excited for, it's got to be Timberwolves Spurs. They just had a great game one. Timberwolves squeak it out, 104-102. Victor Wembanyama had a triple-double with 11 points, 15 rebounds, and 12 blocks in this game, which I don't know if that's a record or not, but that's insane.
Oh my God.
He had 12 blocks. And then Anthony Edwards is playing unlimited minutes. He had 18 points, 11 in the fourth quarter. So started to get his legs under him at the end of game one there. But this is a series that we're talking about. Of any series to go to 7 games, I think this is the one. And I really like the Spurs, but the Timberwolves, they have Chris Finch, who was doing a masterclass against the Nuggets. They have the size to beat the Spurs. If there's any team that they're going to match up with that could disrupt them, this Timberwolves team, it really depends on the health of Anthony Edwards. I feel like he looked pretty good in this game overall. I don't know. I could talk myself into the Timberwolves winning in 7.
Yeah,
but
Anthony Edwards. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I think this is a series that absolutely goes 7, and I think I might take the Timberwolves.
Yeah, and that's definitely going to be the unpopular take for the series, especially with what we saw with everyone talking about Wembanyama. And Wembanyama is a great player. I think he's going to be the best player in this league eventually. But this is their first time in the playoffs. Their coach is a first-year head coach, so he is someone who also needs to figure it out in the playoffs as well and is learning. So they don't have a ton of playoff experience outside of Harrison Barnes, and the Timberwolves have been a team that have made the conference championship in back-to-back years. Everyone picked the Denver Nuggets to beat them, and I'm with you. I'm not going to make the same mistake again, because I do think toughness-wise and defensively, the Timberwolves are just better, and the fact that they forced Wembanyama to go 5 for 17 in this game shows me something where they learned something with Nikola Jokic, and they use that to prepare for Wemby. And, like, sure, Wemby's going to block a lot of shots, but he put a lineup out there that had Rudy Gobert, Naz Reid, and Julius Randle all playing at the same time. He was playing Julius Randle at small forward, and this is what we're seeing this NBA playoffs, with coaches adjusting defensively, where the Timberwolves are going to play essentially 2 power forwards, and Naz Reid is going to be athletic enough. They're going to jam the paint, and then, De'Aaron Fox and Mike Conley, that's going to be a tough matchup, but Mike Conley, veteran-wise on defense, has the savvy to be able to compete with that, and then especially with someone like Jaden McDaniels, that gives you that extra edge on defense. I do think that just coaching-wise and experience in the playoffs, like, everything does point to the Minnesota Timberwolves winning this series, and I don't actually think it goes 7. I think they win this one in 6, just like Denver. It's like the Spurs, like, this definitely feels similar to when vice versa Steph Curry played the San Antonio Spurs in 2014.
Well, I think, like, also, like, we can look at Steph Curry's arc, and I think this is a good comparison for that. But I think just NBA history-wise, this points to the Timberwolves winning. When you look at whether it's LeBron having heartache against the Pistons, whether it's Jordan in the Pistons or Celtics when he faced off against them, like, you don't typically see a champion emerge within the first 2 or 3 years of their relevancy, outside of maybe Tim Duncan, but they also had David Robinson there. But historically, there's going to be some playoff heartbreaks before you break through. And for a Spurs team that I think is well developed, and I think they're only going to get better, this is a series where they can look back on, and maybe next year they make it through. But this Timberwolves matchup is probably the worst matchup they could have had in the second round outside of the Thunder. So I think this is where we see NBA history kick in. The Timberwolves are experienced. They're trying to break through to the finals. You have Anthony Edwards, who's a top 10 player in the league. So, yeah, I think I'm going to go Timberwolves in 7.
Yeah, it's gonna be a tough series. Like, I'm picking, if Ant is healthy and playing in every single game, I'm picking the Timberwolves in 6. Like, obviously, if he doesn't play, I still think the Spurs can come out and do it. But there were times that Portland was able to give the Spurs trouble where you kind of sat back and you're like, it seems like it's a little bit harder than it should be, even with Wemby playing. And then they just have so much experience. And then just the fact that Rudy Gobert has that much length. And then at the end of the game in the fourth quarter, when I was watching it, I just didn't look like how Wemby looked when he was taking those shots. And then you had the last shot that he took against the Nuggets when we had that regular season game to end the season on Amazon that went to overtime where it was Nuggets Spurs. Like, again, he takes a shot at the end of the game. You don't love it. So, like, honestly, like, the Spurs closing has seemed a little bit weak. So if they're not going out there and dominating a team and it's a close game, I trust Anthony Edwards more at this point to close it out and do it. And then he hit the biggest three of the game, and then he went 0 for 8 from 3. And then again, he was 53% from 3 in round 1, but as the playoffs go on, your shooting's going to get a little bit worse. So, like, some of the stars, their shooting's going to get better, but like Wemby, he's 0 for 8 in this game. So is he going to be able to turn it around and then play well in 4 straight games is going to be the real question, because this is really his first test, because everyone saw him play really well in the first regular season. But when you have 7 games to plan for someone and then you're playing the same opponent every single day, very different than just, a different night. Wemby's going to be much harder to stop.
100%. I think another person to point to, like, I know it's only game 1, but De'Aaron Fox also struggles from the field. My biggest thing I see from him is 6 turnovers. So they found a way to trap De'Aaron Fox, prevent him. Doesn't get a lot of good shots up either. He only has 10 points in this game, 6 turnovers. If they found a way to tackle De'Aaron Fox as well, another guy that is that second scorer for them, and they're giving him trouble as well, it seems to me like the Timberwolves are one step ahead defensively than what the Spurs are, where we still had Anthony Edwards. He shot 8 of 13 from 3. Julius Randle shoots 8 of 20. He shoots well. Jaden McDaniel shoots well. And I know every given night, shooting might be different, but it seems like the Timberwolves have figured out how to attack the Spurs. And if it carries into game 2, then yeah, I think this could be 6 or 7 games, but I think the Timberwolves prevail.
Yeah, and if Chris Finch doesn't tear his ACL versus, who knows what could have happened. I don't know, was that the Maverick series or the Thunder series where he tore his ACL, a player ran into him, he blew his knee out, and he was
I forgot
on the sideline with a bench. But I remember, like, him sitting on a bench like through the entire playoffs one year. But I do think the Timberwolves are due at this point. And if we get a rematch of Timberwolves and Thunder, like, I could definitely see the Timberwolves giving them more trouble this time. The problem with the Timberwolves is they've gotten to the conference championship back-to-back years and they've lost in 5, but this team does feel different.
Yeah, this is a team, honestly, the finals that I'm rooting for the rest of the postseason is going to be Timberwolves Knicks. I think that's the best for the NBA. You have Anthony Edwards. You have the Knicks and Timberwolves. Obviously, they traded Karl Anthony Towns there. You have Jalen Brunson, New York, Minnesota. And then the Timberwolves are due for a title. I think they could get that. Even if the Knicks prevail, like, getting him to the NBA Finals is going to be a successful year for the Timberwolves.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be so fitting. It'd just be called the year Anthony Edwards saved America. It's the 250th anniversary. We can't have another foreigner win Finals MVP. We had Jokic, SGA from Canada. Can't happen. So it's like it's time for an American star to come up. So with the whole 250 thing, if the NFL is scripted, or the NBA and the NFL are scripted, you have the USA 250 on the side of the court that they have there. They had it in the Super Bowl. Sam Darnold won a Super Bowl, so what does that tell you? So if Anthony Edwards goes out there, people say Anthony Edwards is the best American player. He could beat Jokic, who is arguably talked about as the best player in the NBA, along with SGA. He's not from America. Wemby's from France. SGA is from Canada. You know? And then you have an American finals where you have the New York Knicks. I think that's a real thing. If the NBA is scripted, of course.
Yeah, of course, because they've never been caught being scripted before. So this would be
They've
a
never
real
been
first
caught
timer.
working with the mafia. They've never been caught cheating. The refs have never been caught gambling. I mean, Brandon
don't-
Miller definitely wasn't gambling. Jaylen Brown definitely wasn't gambling either.
And like they don't have a gambling case going on right now for them. So I mean,
No.
Terry Rozier, he's doing fine somewhere. So like the NBA never has that issue there. But I mean, the funniest part, now that we're talking about Europeans, imagine if somehow the Sixers make it to the finals and he beats Joel Embiid, another foreigner, to just have the most American finals run in the history of the NBA at that
Yeah.
point. But yeah, I think Knicks and Timberwolves make sense. New York, obviously, that's a very big city in America. Probably the biggest. Actually, it is the biggest city in America. You have Anthony Edwards, the face of the league, potentially. So that's the finals I'm rooting for.
Yeah, everyone's
see how
been
it plays
saying
out.
Anthony Edwards is the face of the league too. I'm like, okay, let's see it.
Yeah, if he wins the finals, he will be. He'll have a ring. But I'm sure the NBA will do something to ruin it, just like what they've proposed for the draft lottery. Moving out of the playoff bracket and what we project there, the NBA, if there's any sport that can't figure out certain rules, baseball can't figure out what rules to implement. The NBA can't figure out how to draft their players correctly. They released the draft lottery, and I don't even think MIT scientists or Harvard law degrees can figure out exactly what they're trying to do here. But you have the draft lottery nearby. What are they proposing here? Because it's a fucking mess, to be honest.
Yeah, so Adam Silver, someone who's been accused where his weakness is probably over tinkering, trying to do too much. Well, this has come up again, and the NBA is currently transitioning to a even stricter anti-tanking rule, while current lottery for 2026 still uses the system explained above. The league is set to vote on a massive overhaul on May 28, 2026, known as the 3-2-1 lottery proposal, which could begin in 2027. Here are the key new rules you should know about. Number 1, penalizing the worst teams. This is called the relegation zone. Oh boy. You could be sent to the relegation zone if you suck. Under the current system, being the worst team is rewarded with the best odds. The new proposal flips this. The relegation zone, the 3 teams with the absolute worst records will only get 2 lottery balls, each with roughly a 5.4% chance at the number 1 pick. The reward zone, teams ranked 4th through 10th, and the middle bad teams will actually get the most balls, 3 each, with the 8.1% chance to reward them for trying to win, at least. So if you're 4th through 10, at least you tried. You weren't too bad. And then they'll be expanding the lottery as well. So the lottery is expected to expand from 14 teams to 16 teams. So if you are in the play-in tournament, now you have a chance to get the number 1 overall pick. So this would include 10 teams that missed the playoffs entirely, plus all 4 play-in tournament losers. Even if the losers of the 7th A-seed play-in games would get a chance to get the lottery ball at number 1. So imagine if the Magic were like, you know what? Let's just decide to lose this year and see if we can go out there and get the number 1 pick. But you would have, if you're a 7th or 8th seed, you would get 1 lottery ball and you would have a 2.7% chance. So you would have roughly half the odds of a team that finished in the bottom 3. And then there's no back-to-back wins anymore. So the to stop teams from staying bad for years to collect stars. New restrictions are being introduced. There would be no repeat number one picks. A team would not be allowed to win the number one pick in consecutive years. A top 5 limit. A team could not select in the top 5 in 3 straight years. And then number 4 would be a 2-night event. The draft itself is no longer a single night marathon. It's going to be 2 nights. Yay! No one asked for that.
2 nights for what? The first and second round? Who the fuck is going to watch the second round of the draft? Nobody.
No one cares.
Yeah, there's not a single thing that they propose in the draft lottery that makes it better. That fixes tanking. First of all, expanding to 16 teams. Why does that makes no sense at all. When you have teams like the Pelicans who are rotting in NBA mediocrity forever, the best thing, surprisingly, that has happened to them in the last decade was them getting Zion Williamson, even though he hasn't panned out in the NBA. That's the best opportunity that they had to get out of poverty. You have teams like the Chicago Bulls who have sucked pretty much since Derrick Rose has left that building and Jimmy Butler has left that building, who are going to perpetually suck unless if they get a superstar in the draft. And then I don't understand this flattened odds thing. Like, teams that are sucking are still going to try to suck because the difference between 5% and 3% is still a better chance of getting the number one overall pick. And then, on top of this, banning back-to-back teams, what happens if this team, like the Sixers, for example, who trusted the process and failed miserably, why are we penalizing teams for being bad for consecutive years? I understand, like, they're trying to fix tanking, but there's nothing in this proposal that makes any sense at all. All it sounds like to me is that they want to be able to rig the draft lottery just a little bit more than they already do.
Yeah, it makes it easier to rig the draft. And that was exactly what I was going to say now. So it's a perfect spot to springboard off because if they're like, well, you know, if you're a 7th or 8th seed, you have a 2.7% chance of getting the number one overall pick. And then this is a closed door meeting where teams get ping pong balls. Give me a break. The Dallas Mavericks getting Cooper Flag after they trade for Luka Doncic. Really? The Spurs getting David Robinson, Tim Duncan, and Victor Wembanyama. Really? Like, you want us to believe that this doesn't make it easier to rig it in the NBA when most NBA fans would honestly just prefer that the worst team gets the number one overall pick. And tanking is a problem, sure, but the biggest problem with tanking is that the teams who are actually bad don't get the worst number one overall pick. And there is a reason why gambling addictions exist. There is a reason why people buy lottery tickets. Is it dumb? Yeah. But you still have a chance to make a lot of money. You still have a chance to retire yourself. You could still go to Vegas, get a ton of money. You could still buy that lucky scratch-off ticket. There's a reason why that lottery is so big. And you literally call it the NBA lottery. So, like, teams are still going to do it anyways, even if it's dumb. And I would honestly rather have, like, you know what? If you're poor, you're broke, we want to give you better odds of winning the lottery. If you're a poverty franchise, we would honestly rather see you turn it around and get good, which, you know what, would eventually be better for the NBA, especially when you're going to have to rely on free agency. So you're going to see teams like Memphis continue to suck, and there's not going to be much they can do about it because no one wants to go to Memphis. You're going to see Portland, who is historically cheap, not pay players, where they're literally saying if you're a two-way player, you can't fly with the team during the playoffs to save money. Are you fucking kidding me? And then you're going to have these other teams like the Thunder who could have never been built. They could have never acquired those draft picks. I mean, the Minnesota Timberwolves, no one's ever going to go to Minnesota. You're going to get these blue-collar guys like DiVincenzo, who you ended up, you know, having to sign, and you ended up trading for him with the Julius Randle trade. So it's like, at the end of the day, you're just going to make it harder for these small market teams where players don't want to go. And then you're also going to vote on expanding the league as well. So it's like, no, this doesn't make sense. This is a disaster. Like, Adam Silver just tries to do way too much. We want to discourage tanking. Like, people would rather just see these small market teams get the best player available. Like, honestly, I feel like the fans would prefer the NFL draft.
Yeah, I think so as well. Every once in a while, you'll have the Victor Wembanyama's come around or the LeBron James, where I'm sure there's a lot of teams that are going to tank that year. But at the end of the day, like if LeBron had the choice, and you want to talk about another draft that was rigged, LeBron James getting drafted by his hometown team, that wasn't scripted whatsoever. All it is to me, like you mentioned, it's them just essentially being able to rig the draft lottery even more than they already do. When you have a potential scenario where a team like Golden State that missed the playoffs but was in the play-in tournament has a chance to get the number 1 overall pick so Steph Curry can win another ring, or you have a team like potentially Miami that's always in the sweepstakes, or better yet, maybe the Sixers who might have missed out on the playoffs had the things gone their wrong way, and you have a chance to pair Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid, and VJ Edgecombe with a top draft pick. Like, there's no way in hell that a play-in tournament team should get lottery odds. There's no reason why they should have flattened odds. All of this strictly is just to make the NBA rig it even better.
And for a team that struggles, or for a league that struggles to compete with the NFL for views, where the NFL is literally saying, hey, we're taking Christmas away from you now. And they're like, what? They stuffed coal in the NBA stocking. They're taking away Christmas. And for a league that's struggling to get views compared to the NFL, where most people would rather watch the Browns and Jets on Thursday Night Football than the Celtics and Lakers, you know what they decided to do? You notice anything weird about the games tonight in the semifinals?
What?
They overlapped. What is this? Like, the games on, like, NBC and Peacock are now overlapping, and we have back-to-back nights where we're going to have two of the semifinals games going on simultaneously, where the NBA usually does a handoff. Why wouldn't you want people to have the maximum amount of time to watch both games, but instead, if the Pistons or if the Sixers and Knicks game was close in the fourth quarter, you could have. There was 10 minutes left, and it was into the second quarter of the Spurs and Timberwolves game. And, like, I don't get why these games are overlapping together. Like, it should be, okay, we have this game, and then as soon as this one ends, or maybe it slightly bleeds into the fourth quarter, then it's a handoff. Like, usually in the NBA, I feel like the playoffs have been, you just go into the first quarter of the next game. But this was the first year I've seen them, like, kind of bleed games together. It's different when you have, like, 3 games on a night. I get that. But when you just have 2 games, why aren't you trying to maximize the amount of time that people are going to watch both games?
I remember the thing that we complain about for the NFL every single year is the fact that they have 2 Monday night games, because everybody hates it, and there's always a really bad game and a game that's a little more interesting, so everyone ends up watching that game instead. It doesn't work for anybody. It doesn't work for the networks. It doesn't help for the advertisements. It doesn't help for anything for the product involved with the sport that we're talking about. In the NBA, I don't understand why they introduced this. It's very easy to just have a game at 4:30 and 7:30 Pacific Coast time and have it carry over like every other sport. So I don't understand that. But the NBA, like, I feel like of all the sports, the NBA gets in its own way the most, especially with the draft lottery, especially with they have the gambling issues, they have the ref issues. Like, the NBA just gets in its own way half of the time, and they try to think that they're the smartest in the room, when realistically, fixing the tanking issue is really not that hard. If anything, instead of expanding the lottery, they should lessen the lottery. And then at that point, I think that would honestly benefit it.
Yeah, and we talk about sports on this show. There's a reason why we don't talk about politics, and that's another area where, like, the NFL, they have, like, and racism in the end zone. Like, that's whatever. It's kind of just a virtue signal. Like, they had the Kaepernick situation, but I feel like of any sport, like, the NBA is definitely the most, like, polarizing, whether you agree with them or not.
100%. Absolutely. And their players in general are just it's a lot more ego driven in the NBA, whereas the NFL, it's very team centric. Baseball, hockey, same kind of thing. So yeah, NBA, I think as it is, people are starting to lose interest in the NBA. The regular season sucks. There's a bunch of teams tanking. I forgot what their record was after January. The records between playoff teams and non-playoff teams, the record was ridiculous. So yeah, the NBA is they're losing. I think they're overthinking it a little bit too much. and they're losing viewership because of it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is overthinking it, because like you compare Goodell to Adam Silver, people say like Goodell's really good at making money, Adam Silver's really good at being an activist. Like, well, okay. And like at this point, like the NBA is like, I feel like they rely on China like pretty heavily now for viewership too, which is like the other issue that they're having, where it's like more of a global sport where the NFL still dominates them, but it's still just primarily American and they make more money.
Yeah. Do you think this lottery draft ends up going through, or do you think? I honestly don't know if this is going to pass, because I don't
I
see why
hope not.
anybody would want this. Why would anybody want this? If you're, especially like, I think of all the teams that suck right now, why would the Bulls vote for this? Why would the Nets, the Pacers, who have a low draft pick this year, why would the Pelicans, the Grizzlies, the Kings, the Jazz, like why would anybody vote in favor of this? Nobody benefits from this.
Yeah, if you're Utah or Memphis, where like no one wants to go there, what? It's like even Charlotte, like Charlotte's not necessarily even the worst place to live, but they don't attract big free agents either.
Not at all.
The Bulls, it's like no, I could see enough of these teams like no, this is stupid. The NBA seems like they're just trying to do way too much with this new draft lottery. So hopefully the owners don't go through with this one.
Yeah, I hope not either. But we've covered the NBA playoffs and the draft lottery. Before we conclude our show today, we talked a lot of NBA. We continue our segment of what we've been watching. So I'll pass it over to you as far as what you have been consuming, watching, listening to, whatever else.
Yeah, I started a new show on Paramount Plus called Tulsa King. And it is a show starring Sylvester Stallone. It's created by Taylor Sheridan, and it opens up with Sylvester Stallone saying, I've been in prison. My father was an Italian immigrant. He asked me, do you want to be a barber like me? And I said, no, father. I want to be a successful gangster. And that's exactly what he became. He was loyal to his Italian gang, and then he ended up having to do a hit on someone, didn't talk, so he was in jail for 25 years. He gets out and he's 75 years old, and then they essentially say, like, yeah, actually, did you know there's no one in Tulsa, Oklahoma? Why don't you go over there? You're kind of banished. So they push him out, and then he's essentially starting his own, you know, gang empire from New York to Tulsa, Oklahoma. And honestly, the show is a lot funnier than I thought it would be. It has Sylvester Stallone, and this show really made me realize I'm like, wow, old Sylvester Stallone is so much cooler than Arnold Schwarzenegger, to be honest, because I feel like Creed, he was really good in that movie, and honestly, he carries the show. And it's one of those shows where streaming and cable have kind of caught up to each other. We're getting some of these original shows that look like cable. Like this one feels like it should be like a cable show, but it is enough where it's filmed like a movie, where it doesn't necessarily feel like you're watching a cable show, and then Sylvester Stallone is charismatic enough to carry it. There's honestly a lot of moments where I laughed out loud watching this, and Martin stars in the show as well. He's in Freaks and Geeks. He plays like the tall nerdy kid, and then he's also Guilfoyle in Silicon Valley. I think he's like SNL alum, but he's been really funny in the show. Yeah, him and Sylvester Stallone, it's also like a fish out of water scenario because his parents are Italian immigrants. He knows nothing other than New York, and they're like, why don't you fuck off and go to Oklahoma and start a new gang there? And the reason I started the show is because, do you know Michael Franzese?
Sounds familiar.
He's like also the mob member who's like a podcaster now. He was saying like this is like one of the more accurate portrayals of like a mob member. So I'm like, okay, I'll check it out. Honestly, if you like the genre, funny show. Like it's kind of a comedy.
Yeah, I just watched. I just pulled it up and I see a Reddit review. It's like, Tulsa King is terrible. Why do I keep watching? And it's got good ratings overall. The thing that has me hooked on it is like certain times just that one co-star. In this case, Sylvester Stallone. Sylvester Stallone, I never thought of him being a mob boss, but picturing it in my head, I'm like, this show is gold. Like, Sylvester Stallone, I don't know what it is. He's this old. It looks like he's got a lot of work done. His face is all scrunched up. Like, I never thought, when I think of Sylvester Stallone, I think of Rambo and I think of like the Expendables, and I never thought in my head, whoever came up with the idea, let's make him a mob boss, that guy deserves a raise. Because I'm thinking about it now, like, he must be so sick in this show. He's got to be
awesome.
so cool.
He carries
Yeah.
the show, and honestly, like, his comedic timing is what separates it too. Like, because he's a fish out of water. Like, think of someone who spent their entire life in New York and they're trying to figure out like Tulsa, Oklahoma, a city of like 400,000 people with 2 high rises.
Yeah, this show looks actually hilarious, and I do
'Cause
have
they're like-
Paramounts. I gotta
They're
see
like
it.
trying to get him to buy a cowboy outfit at some point. They're like, you need a new suit or whatever, get the style. And then he's bonding with this one kid who he makes him his driver. And then you're seeing him like build his entire like kind of criminal empire. So I'm on like midway through the first season now. And honestly, the pacing of the show is really good as well. So it's like one of those shows you're like, this shouldn't be good, but it's kind of like addicting.
Yeah, again, like Sylvester Stallone, Martin Starr, and I see some other people there too. Like when I envision, like I never, it's one of those things like I never thought about it in my head, and now that it's in my head, I can't get out of it. Because who would have
Taylor
thought?
Sheridan did like Yellowstone too, so he's done some
Okay.
like other popular shows. He's doing
Okay,
the Call
so
of
he's-
Duty movie.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, he's, okay. So I'm intrigued by this. I'm gonna watch an episode because Sylvester Stallone is a mob boss. That's peak. That's hilarious. But while one person has started a new show, I have concluded another. Finally, after all the way back with dating Vanessa to now, I have officially finished Seinfeld. It's over now.
Wow.
So
Finally.
I saw yeah, it took me 4 years, a couple of canceled Netflix subscriptions, but we've gone through all 200 episodes of Seinfeld officially. And the ending, everyone shits on the ending of Seinfeld because essentially what happens is they're in a random town in Massachusetts. They're in Latham, Massachusetts, and they see this guy getting robbed. And rather than help them, they just record him and like make fun of him essentially. And they're like, "Oh my God, look at this loser. He's too fat to have a car stolen from him, blah, blah, blah." And so the cop arrests them for a good Samaritan law. And they have all of the previous people that have been on Seinfeld testify whether they're good people or not. And all of them just talk about all the evil shit they've done. Like this guy, they had an episode where there's like this really good soup shop down the street, but the guy's kind of an asshole. So eventually she finds the recipe and like reveals it to everybody, and he like has to go home and like go back to his main country because it's like some Italian immigrant. And there's just a list of all these other people that they've done wrong in the show, like over the course of the 9 seasons, and everyone just goes up there and testifies and talks about how awful they are. And it's a perfect way to end the show. Everyone that shits on the show because, oh my God, they got arrested, they're gone. Like, no, that is a perfect way to end Seinfeld. Oh, I think you froze.
Yeah, talked about as one of the worst. Oh,
There we go. You froze for a second
am I
there.
still here?
Yeah.
I was watching like a clip with Kramer, like, yeah, we had like so and so work with us, and like we didn't think we were that bad to work for. We didn't think it was like that toxic of a set in the interviews. Like, have you done like any
Oh, you froze again. I think you froze again. I think we might have lost Marcus there. Oh. We have lost Marcus. That's okay. Seinfeld. One of the best comedic shows of all time. Highly recommend it. The ending, especially if you've gone through all 180 episodes and you're a fan of all the different girlfriends that Jerry has, that Costanza has, that Kramer has, that Elaine has, like all of them coming together. I think it's one of the best finales of any comedic show of all time. It's heavily criticized, but I also think that of any show, like throughout the entire show, everyone's just a monster. They're not very good people. And I just think definitely check it out. Also check out Tulsa King. Also check out, obviously, the NBA playoffs that are soon to ensue. I'm not sure what's going on with Marcus, if he's going to be back or not. But let's wrap it up. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Brickyard. We are here 7 p.m. live Pacific time, so 10 p.m. Eastern time. We'll be here to cover all things NBA, NFL, and beyond. Most importantly,